Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. So what we are going to get is actually, most of you might be knowing about that already, but we want to give a sort of a heads up on various areas here, especially with respect to PMS. Of course, PIMS is going to be the major one, but related to that, what are the other things that are going to be there that we'll be focusing on? And we'll also be seeing some things like how we have done recently. I've done some sort of implementation of this PMS. So I'm going to share that information also from you with you. And one thing that we'll be focusing on that is there are allied areas, allied standards and other management systems that we'll be referring here. If time permits, we'll be focusing some time on that also. Otherwise, it is going to be purely on this one because it is more of an introductory sessions that we have. So with that introduction, I'm going to start with this session. To get started where we are. So first thing is, the thing that we are going to cover is PIMS, the Privacy Information Management System. So which has been a main thing now in recent years. Like if you see the last decade, there were a lot of talk were there on ISMS, Information Security Management System. And now the whole thing has changed. Now we focus more on Privacy Information Management System, which is the in thing there. And even it is in news in India also. There was an act which was there. And of course, there were some drafts that were going on. Now, what we are going to see here is not specific to any particular management system, but of course, it will be on the outset, we'll be touching areas that are related to ISO 27701, which is the PIMS system, what we talk about, but we'll also be touching the other areas which are relevant to our discussion that we are going to have today and tomorrow. Now, this team, we have been in this IT and other areas of training in these areas and that implementation for almost like a decade now. And we have been training across the world, across the globe, various programs that we've been doing on this one. And this is one of the things we just want to get a start. So, and that's a reason that we want to give this, we want to share this information to many of you so that you can, people who are not aware or people who are not got opportunity to know about this is an opportunity for them. That's why we set this webinar session so that people will get benefit from that one. So to get started, we'll move into that. This is going to be for day one, what we have in this presentation. So we're going to cover this Privacy Information Management System. What is that we are going to cover in 2 different sessions? We have 4 sessions of each, and then we will be covering the areas that are, so in 2 days, we are going to cover these areas. We are going to start with the introduction for this PIMS, and then we'll also be having an overview of 27701. Which is a specific standard for PIMS. And we'll also be touching upon these standards and the laws that are there across the world, which are in parallel with, or the other way, all these 4 are talking about the same thing, but there are going to be, the requirements are going to be a little bit different depending on the requirement that are there from the government side. So that's a thing in this one. If you look at this one, these 3 are specific to region, whereas this 27701 is common. It can be applied anywhere because GDPR is for European countries and CCPA is for a specific area. PDPA also only for India, whereas 27701. So that is what we are going to have today. We'll also be having on risk assessment, how to do, and we'll be having some discussion on that. On day 2, that is going to be for tomorrow evening. We'll continue with our discussion and we'll see that how we can leverage ISMS for implementing 27701. You see that there are a lot of connection between ISMS and 27701. That's what we are going to see. But how, when organization which is already certified, we have already implemented 27701 ISMS is there, then in that case, how easily we can leverage that so that we can get this PIMS implemented there. In that perspective, we can look into that. And then I'll also try to share some simple templates for that can be used for PIMS implementation. And we are going to see that how we are going to set up our team so that that team is all the roles that are required for implementing PIMS in any organization. So that's what is going to be the topics that we are going to cover in 2 sessions. We have almost like 8 hours of session, and then first 4 today and next 4 is going to be for tomorrow from 7 to 11. Okay, with that introduction, let's get on. Prerequisite for this training. Yes, there are two things that I can say about this one. One thing, if you have idea about ISMS, then you get a lot of points that you can capture from this one. But it is not necessary, again, even if you are not familiar with information security management system, for them also it is going to be, you can take on from there also, because we are going to cover initially, we have some slides which will be giving about introduction about ISMS also. So, and tomorrow also we're going to talk about that. So I don't think that's going to be specific prerequisite for for this one. But one thing is we should know about this, those who are in the industry and those who know this terminologies related to information technology, and especially on this information security area, then things are going to be easier. Otherwise also they can follow that. It's not going to be that rocket science what we are going to discuss here. Okay, now the thing that we are going to cover here is, we start from this one for the people who are not, who are just starters here, who have not done anything on information as such. Now, how these things are getting evolved. So we have something called data, and from that we got information. Then we are translating that into knowledge, and then we are trying to identify opportunities and make use of that. That is what we all do that, because every information that we have, these informations are going to be used for taking decisions. That is why we are spending a lot of money on getting the information collected. And if the information is going to be available with us the way that the moment that we want, based on that, we are going to make decisions on that. So decision is going to be possible when you have a right knowledge on that one. And that knowledge is going to be gained by the information that you are going to collect. Information is going to be only on the context. You have a data, you are going to set a context to the data, and based on that, you are going to convert that information into knowledge. So that is what is going to be there. You have a raw data, that is what is going to be the first thing. Like when I say that, like there's 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 20 people. So these things are raw data. Just by reading that one, we will not be in a position to say what is the meaning. You may know that it is a data, but will not make any sense of it. But when you are going to add some value to that, when you are going to set a context to that one, that is what that will become information. So when I say that it is going to be like, when I say date, I have some 50 dates available there. Now, just dates are not going to give it. That's a raw data what we have. Then I say that these are the holidays that are going to be applicable for 2 years. So if I give if I set that context, then that becomes an information. That's the thing what we do here. Normally, when we talk about data, there are multiple ways of collecting the data. So it is manual as well as automated things are there, where you, depending on how do you want to do that one, depending on where you want to use the data, you will be collecting that, where the data, the collected data is going to be, you are going to extract that, you are going to clean that. Cleaning is you are going to remove all the noises and you want to get only the thing that you are looking for. If required, you are going to reformat that, and then you categorize. Then you get a meaningful information from this one. So any data, when you are going to do this extraction as part of that, at the end, what we're going to get is something we are going to infer from that. That is what is the information what we talk about. Information is always going to be with, you are going to use this data specific to a context. You are going to set a context to that, and then you are going to get a meaning to that one. Otherwise, data by itself, it is not going to be of any meaning at all. So once you have this information available, bits and pieces of information that's going to be available, when you try to get the big picture of that, that's what we have, a knowledge. So when you start analyzing that from various sources and you get a different type of information and you try to link those information together, and that is what is going to be used for our different analysis techniques that we'll be using. Based on that, we'll be doing some decisions and we get some knowledge out of that. So the combined knowledge, or the information that we have, if you are going to combine that, and from that combined information, what you get is a knowledge. So depending on which field you want to do, which domain you want to do, that's a knowledge. And this knowledge, why we bother to gather this information and convert into a knowledge? Because this knowledge is going to help us to identify opportunities. Now, opportunities can be anything. Opportunities can be, if you want to work for a job, then again, you are going to collect knowledge that is related to job information. So depending on our requirement, we are going to gather this knowledge, and then from that knowledge, you should be in a position to identify opportunities. Now, it can be for opportunities, or it can be for making some decisions in normal process that we have. So once the knowledge is available, that's what we are going to use for improving that, because based on this, the opportunities for improvement you will get, or you can innovate that. Based on that, you can exploit that, or sometimes you know that based on that, you know that you can avoid such a situation because of the knowledge that we have. Suppose you say that when we know that it's going to rain tomorrow, then we will not be planning. So that is what is avoidance. That so that the information, that knowledge is what is going to be more useful. But the knowledge that we get from the as a knowledge when we are get before that, there are a lot of activities that are happening. So data collected and then it is extracted. It is, you are inferring the information, and then you are going to combine that and then collate that, and then you get a knowledge, and that is what is going to be used for getting some opportunities, or one of the things that you are going to, either you are going to improve it, innovate it, exploit it, or avoid it, whichever way you want. That is what is going to be useful. So any application that we have in our organization, the only thing that we use for that is only for information. So any application, when we talk about application, software application, the primary purpose of the software application is always going to retrieve the data. It is not for even saving the data, because we save the data only to retrieve it. So we need the data whenever we want, and based on that, we are going to take decision. So decision making, database decision making is going to be possible only when you have a system and you have a structured way of storing your data. And that is what is going to be possible when you have this entire thing that you are going to do that one. And now what is the problem in this one? So it seems to be very simple that what is a problem that we are going to have in this one? Now the knowledge at this form, from here, from data to information, information to knowledge, when we are going to come out from this location to this space, there are a lot of opportunities that are there, and there are a lot of effort you need to put. Now, when you're going to put this effort here, at the end, you are going to get some knowledge, and this knowledge that you have got after putting a lot of effort, if somebody is going to use that directly without putting this effort, then we will be at loss. So that is what is the information security, what we talk about. So any knowledge that is going to be there as part of the information or knowledge that's going to be there in our organization, or as a matter of fact, as an individual information that we gather, if somebody is going to steal that information, then we want to have a way to stop that one. That is where the whole thing starts about. So you talk about the data, then the knowledge, and to use that knowledge for getting the opportunities. But the problem, the risk there is always people there who are going to exploit that one. So our efforts are being misused by others, or sometimes they are going to damage the knowledge what you have created. Archived data is going to be damaged, so that neither they get benefit out of that, and nor us. So this is the problem that we have. That is why we have something called information security. So information security is all about saving this information, protecting this information, so that this information is going to be secured. And then the people who are supposed to make use of that, they will be in a position to access that and then make use of that. That's what we are. That is why we have the system. We have, that is what we were talking about here. So now the point that we have to make here is how we are going to do that one, because it is not going to happen manually. Manually, it is not going to happen. You need to have a system for that one. So what we have here is, when you want to manage the system, we have that information management system that we need to have. We need to have a way so that we can manage the information that we have. Now, when you say, why do you want to manage, and what is the meaning of manage? There are a lot of processes that you do as part of this information that we have. So one of the process that we have is creating, sometimes we create the information, sometimes we receive it from somewhere else. So the data that we are going to retrieve from somewhere else, you are going to extract the data, and then, or sometimes you are going to create, you are going to something like we do a research, and then based on that, we are going to create that. So either case, we are going to use that for some process, or we are going to store it. We store it so that we can use it later. So this is the purpose of that. So when the process is there, where this data is going to be used, this management system, this information management system that is going to be there, it is going to help us, and it is going to help us to get this done, because these things are going to be available, and then you can use that information whenever you want. Sometimes you will be using that information for some purpose, or sometimes you are going to share it to somebody else. So we are going to transmit it and then do that one. This is the ideal thing that we'll be doing as part of any information that you want to have as part of our information management system. Now there are losses that will be always there. So sometimes you will get the information destroyed. Sometimes it will totally you will lose that one. Sometimes it will get corrupted so that you cannot make the full information out of you cannot infer that. And then sometimes it is going to be totally lost. So these are the risks that we are going to face. Now, this is a benefit that we are going to have here. Either we are going to use it or we are going to share it to somebody else. On the other side, you are also going to have some risks there throughout the life cycle of the information management system, where there are always these risks. They are always making us to lose this advantages, what we are, the benefit that we have at this end. So that is what is going to be part of this. So when you talk about information management system, it is just not managing the information what we already gathered. So managing is the first thing, because it is used for the opportunities that we have. And along with that, we'll also be focusing on how to ensure this information to be protected and secured. That is where this information security management system has come. From there, we started all these things. This is there. This has not happened just 10 years before or 15 years before. This is there for a time memorial, because these things are there. Any form of information that is there, that is always going to have its own value. So depending on the secrecy of that information, confidentiality of that information, it has its own value, and people want to protect it at various levels. And this concept of information security is not a new terminology or new thing, which is there for thousands of years. But only thing now, we get a focus and we give that context to the information which is stored in computers. That is where we are focusing now. And that's the main thing that what we are focusing on. And this particular system, what we talk about is related to the information which is going to be stored in computer system or applications. Now, when we talk about information management system, it need not be software-based one. It need not be a software application. You can have an information management system which is purely physical also. Now, consider the case of library. Our conventional libraries, they have a lot of information in the form of books, and they are all cataloged. And anything that you want to get from that, you always have a way to get that information whenever you want. There are ways to search that. So there should be a system so that we should be in a position to get the information whenever we want, the one what we want and whenever we want. That is what is the system what we talk about. So when we talk about information management system, it can be physical or it can be logical. But when actually in the practical purposes, it's not going to be easy for us to maintain physical management system, physical information management system. We will be focusing more on the logical one, which is going to be the software-based information management system. So there are multiple things. Now, what you call that as the information, where it is going to be there. We are going to see step by step here. So you have, what you have seen is only the management system here. Now we go to the next step. There we will be seeing that where it is going to be residing. So every information is going to be part of an asset. So it's going to be residing somewhere. If you are going to read a book, now that book, that physical book is an asset. So in that asset, the information is going to be there. So information needs an asset. So that is what we talk about in the software application perspective also. We have certain virtual assets that are there. So any information asset, we call something as an information asset when it is going to hold, when it is going to contain some form of information. Now, it can be a physical or a virtual one. So anything that is going to be physical, like it is, there are certain things which we call as a physical one. All printed things are going to be physical, or anything that's going to, like, when logical thing is always going to be the file folder that we have in our server, or databases that we have, or mails that we are going to get, or the enterprise applications, ERP applications that are there, or automated logs and alerts that are going to be saved for some future reference use. All these things are going to be considered as information asset. So information asset is where this is lying. So sometimes like attendance sheet, suppose we go to office and then sign every day on attendance sheet. So attendance register is there. That attendance register itself is going to be information asset. It is a physical asset. Like this, there are going to be multiple things that will be there, and we will be having that as asset. Now we'll be focusing more on the asset because the threats are going to be there. We are going to extend that to the next level. So we started with information management system, and we see the assets. Assets are going to be part of the entire system that we have. In the assets, you are going to use these processes to get some output, whatever you want. You are going to make use of that. The benefits are going to be achieved from that one. Now, when we are taking it to the next level, we want to have a security. So far we assume that there are no problems here, but we did mention about there are certain risks that we have here. Now, these risks, when these risks are there, we need to have a way to avoid this. That is where we have something called information security. In this part, there are three primary things which are always considered. These are the three characteristics of information: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. CAA is the one which is going to talk about the way that we are going to manage our information. So these three are always going to be, and when we talk about information security management system, ISMS, though the terminologies that are there, when you talk about security, we may think that security is always related only to confidentiality. That's not the way. The moment we talk about information security management system, all three are equally important, because losing the confidentiality is one thing. Losing the data integrity also we need to consider as part of the information security loss. And if you are losing the availability, that is also going to be considered as a loss. So it is going to be part of that everything. You have all the things considered with the equal importance. It is not that only the confidentiality is going to be considered, just because grammatically this is very closer to the word security. All three are equally important. That's what we're going to see that when you want to have information security management system. So these three will be together, because it's going to have an effect on the assets that we have, because these assets, the information assets that we have, these assets, for these assets, they will be having the data, and based on the data that the asset has, we are going to evaluate this integrity, availability, and confidentiality, and that is what is going to give what is going to be the value for that asset. From that, we'll take it to the next level. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability, always a main thing that we talk about information security management system. Now, the next step from the information management system, we come to information security management system. So we want the things to be secured. And when we say that it is secured, what is to be secured? We are going to ensure that the assets are going to be secured, and also the logical information that is there, that is also going to be secured. So when we talk about a system, what is the meaning of the system? Whenever we say a system, it is going to be a combination of three things. You have a people, process, and the infrastructure. So they combine together and then form a system. So anything that you want to do, the people are going to use the process, and then they will also be using the infrastructure to do a particular thing. So that what should be done, that is what is given as part of the process. Combination of that, these three together is going to form a system. So whenever we talk about a threat or a vulnerability that is there in our system, that's going to be applicable for these three things. Vulnerability can be the person, or it can be on the process, or it can be at the infrastructure that we have. So when we have information security management system, what we are going to focus on that. So as part of this, we will be having some people, some process, and that's going to be a huge infrastructure that is going to be there. So that is how we are going to define the system. So you will be having certain assets, information assets are going to be there as part of that, which is the hardware and the software together, whichever way you want to mean that one. And we will also be having a process around that, and people are always roles are going to be defined, and there are going to be people mapped to those roles, and they are the one who are going to be there. So combination of that is going to form information security management system. Now, when that is there, there are always going to be vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities are something that is what is always going to bring down these things. The expected level of integrity, availability, and confidentiality that we have, anything that comes when we are targeting on these things, the levels of these things, what you have already committed, anything that comes in between and it is not letting us to meet the target, that is what we call as a threat or risk. And that why that is happening, this is because our system has vulnerable points. Wherever our system is going to be weak, so wherever it is going to be fragile, all these threats are going to play there, and then it's going to create a risk. So risk is a situation. When we talk about a risk, there is a difference between threat and a risk. Risk is a situation. In that situation, there are going to be some threats which are already there, So these threats are going to make use of the vulnerabilities in our system, and then it is going to create a damage to our system. That particular moment or that particular incident, what we call as a risk. Now, when we talk about, we are going to talk on this more later. When we talk about this vulnerabilities and risk, one of the things that we always see that is the level of risk, the threat what we have is always going to impact. So the level of impact is always going to be dependent on impact, the particular risk that we have. Along with that, it is also be dependent on the vulnerability. When the system is going to be weak, then the weakest threat is also going to damage our system more. When the system is going to be strong, vulnerabilities are not there, low-level vulnerability is there, then even if the threat is there, it is not going to affect us. So when you consider the threat, virus is a threat, virus threat we have. So when you have a firewall, that is then it is going to prevent us. If we have not updated firewall software, or if you have not installed firewall at all, then that is going to be a vulnerability. And that is what this virus is going to look for, and that is what it is going to make use of that, and then it's going to damage us. So that is what is a vulnerability, what we talk about. So when we have a security management system as part of this, what we are looking for here is to first to know what type of vulnerabilities that we have. And the next step, you will see that how we can minimize it, how to remove these vulnerabilities, or how we can minimize that. That's what we are going to see later. Now, protecting us or protecting the system against these three: loss of availability, confidentiality, and integrity. That is what we say as security management system. So when we say that our system is going to be secured, it is going to be secured against loss of all three together. So that is what is the information security management system. So defining this one is going to be easier, but one thing that always there is, it is going to be challenging, because these threats that we have are going to be numerous. So depending on the severity of that, it is going to always hit us, and then even one of this is going to be failed, then we are going to have hit because of that. We are going to have a big impact because of that. So that's the thing that we have as part of the security management system. Okay, now how we are going to have controls, how we are going to control this. One of the things that we have, any project, when you talk about project, Jayant, Miley, I think if you are interested in marking it, you can do it somewhere else because it's distracting others also. I request you. Okay, now when we talk about project, any project will be having these things. You have a plan for a project. So you are going to have a plan, and then when you want to execute it, you are going to execute it. When you execute, when things are going to be normal, the execution is always going to be in sync with the plan. So plan, the way that you have planned, you are going to execute it. At the end, you are going to get the target, what you have already planned. So it's going to be simple. But in the real life scenario, the real time scenario, this is never going to happen. There are going to be thousands of risks that is always there, which will not let that plan to go, or let that execution to go as per the plan. This is where the problem. So that is where the challenge of project management is going to be. Now, when we talk about here information security, that's the same thing here. What you want to have is threatless, or you want to have incident-free management system as part of our organization. But how to do that one? So we have a plan for that. We'll be having certain things to do that one. So there are going to be thousands of risks that are going to be there, and these risks are not letting us to reach our target. So when this is going to be there, the challenge of project manager is always one thing. So he is going to have monitoring and control. That's the third step we have. We have plan, then execution, and monitoring and control. Monitoring and control is a dual activity that we do normally. We monitor known risk. We are going to identify the risk and start monitoring them. And the activity of monitoring is always going to tell us one thing. Whenever the execution goes, or it deviates from the plan that we have, then that deviation is going to be alerted to us because of the monitoring activities. Now, monitoring activity can be a manual one, or it can be automated. In our information system, most of the activities or monitoring activities are actually automated. So this monitoring activity is going to tell us that there is a deviation which has just happened or about to happen. Now, that is what we are going to pick from there. And then we are already prepared for that. And then we have certain control measures available. So you are going to pick the corresponding control measure apply that, and then you are going to pull back that execution as per the plan. Then our execution will go as per the plan. Again, there is going to be another risk. So this monitoring and control is going to be going in a cyclic way. Continuously, you are going to get multiple risks, one after other. The risks are going to happen. And then we will be having some control measure. You are going to apply that and then pull it back to the original planned way and then keep moving. So ultimately, the challenge of the project manager or challenge of the person who is going to lead that is, in spite of all these risks that are there, we should be in a position to identify them, and we should be prepared to have some countermeasures to that and then pull that so that our execution should be in sync with the plan. So that is what is going to be the ideal situation, what we talk about. So this is what everyone is going for that. And the more prepared you are, if you identify more number of risks, suppose it depends on feasibility, like will you be in a position to invest that much amount on that? Do you have a budget for that? Do you have people for that? Do you have a technology for that? There are going to be a lot of things, constraints that are going to be there. In spite of that, if you are in a position to do that one, then your way of attacking this, your way of having a countermeasures is going to be already available with you so that you can minimize. And again, when we talk about this, the countermeasures, it is not possible for every risk that we have. It is not possible for us to eliminate them. So there are certain risks you cannot eliminate. It should be there. It will be there forever. So normally this is a thing when the moment we are born with the risk of dying. So we know that we are going to die one day or other, but still we continue with that because that risk is not the probability of that is going to be less. So that is where we are going to analyze the risk, and then whichever is going to be of higher degree, where we are going to apply that. We are going to see that how we will be prepared for that one. That is what is going to be part of this. How do you do that? That is where we have set of controls that is suggested by this information security management system. So there are multiple controls for various areas. Now, as for the ISMS, you have multiple security controls, which are actually categorized into 4 categories. So one thing is on the organizational control. It's specific to the, so you are going to apply that on the organization, so it is going to take care. Some of the things are going to be on the people. Some are going to be on the physical control that you are going to have. Physically, these things are going to protect us. And there are a lot of controls that are there, which are going to be implemented in using a technology. So these are the 4 ways by which we are going to have control measures. Now we're just going to have what are that are there, just to get a view of that. A lot of things that will be there as part of the organizational control. First thing is we need to have a system. So when we say that I'm having an information security management system, if you do not have a system, it is not, you cannot achieve the security what you are looking for. First thing is you need to have a policy, and to get that policy implemented, because policy is more of a qualitative wish of the organization. So if you want that to happen, what you need is you need to execute that. To execute that, you need to have a procedures. So policies and then the procedures that are required, that should be part of that. So you need to have controls for getting these policies defined, and then you will also be having controls for getting these procedures done and how to control those procedures if they are not going as per the way that we have planned. And we are also, when we have some processes defined, we need to have some roles and responsibilities. This was I was talking. Any system that you have, first you need to have some process. Then you need to have some people to work with that. And there are going to be infrastructure. So this, when you see, look at this thing, control measures, you have certain things which are related to each of this. All 3 are going to be part of this one. So organization specific controls that are there, which are going to be applied throughout the organization. So when you're going to define a role, that role is for the organization. At the organization level, you do access control, how people can access to particular asset, information asset, and how are you going to classify information? All information is not going to be of same importance. So depending on, and we don't have to put effort, equal effort for the information that we have. So normally we classify the information, and based on the severity of that, we will be having different ways of treating them, because it is not possible for us to give same level of protection for every information that we have, which is not needed also. So that is where the classification of information should come. How are we going to access the control? This is the logical control, and the other thing what we talk about. And identity management. This is main thing. We need to have sort of a we need to authorize first, and also we need to see somebody is using the information. We need to authenticate who is the person. We need to know. We need to know the identity of the person who is using that one. So we are going to have a management for that one. Then the information security incident management, when the incidents are going to happen. So we were talking about the risk there, even though in spite of we having certain controls implemented as part of our organization, there are always going to be certain risks which are going to occur. So when the risks are occur, then the impact is going to happen. So when the impact has happened, then only we say that it is an incident. So any risk, normally risk is going to happen in future. The moment the risk is occurred, then we call that as an incident, depending on the severity of that. If the severity is going to be less, then we call that an incident. If it is more, then we go to say that as an emergency, or it is going to be sometimes it will we will be business continuity itself is going to be disturbed because of that. So the way that it is all depend on what is going to be the impact level on the risk that you have. So incident management is how are you going to address that when these risks are going to occur. So it is impact after impact thing, how we are going to do that, how prepared you are to meet the incidences. Then on the people side, you have, when you are going to people, when we want the people as part of our system, we will have to ensure that we will have to ensure that whatever is there, the risks that should not be from the person side. So we are going to focus on that. And when we are going to employ them, there are certain controls that are to be applied before employment, during employment, after employment, depending on that. Physical controls are going to be how you are not allowing people to physically enter into certain area. So you are going to secure certain areas, and you are going to allow only protecting that so that physically people cannot go inside. Like if it is a server room, we are not going to allow everyone into that one. That is what is a secured area, what we talk about. Securing offices, rooms, facilities, and other thing. This one is a physical control, what we talk about. This technology, yeah, this one, this is organizational control. We are trying to bring administrative control there. We set this as a policy. We set this as a process, and we tell them that you should not do that. So that is administrative one. Wherever it is possible, we would like to go for technological control, because that is what is going to be more beneficial than this one. In this technological control, that is what is going to be more on our IT information side. So access rights are always already given, and we are going to tell them that you are given internet service, you can use that, but what are the do's and don'ts? That is what is organization control. You are given access, but there is a chart. You will have to know that you should be aware of that, what is do's and what are don'ts there. Whereas in this one, you can restrict that. Technology, using the technology, we are going to restrict certain things here, privileged access rights, information access restrictions, we can do that one. Secure authentication, protection against malware, and management of technical vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities are, first thing is you need to identify whether the system is vulnerable or not. One thing with the vulnerability is it is always dynamic. What you consider today as something is not vulnerable, next moment it will become vulnerable. That is because of the dynamic nature of the environment. When the environment, if the new threat is going to come, the same system that we have is become vulnerable. That is why virus, when a new virus is going to be there, then the virus scanner that we have may not be useful. You need to go for a patch. So this is what is there. When you are not applying the patch, then we are still vulnerable. So that is what we talk about, this technical vulnerabilities on a periodical basis. We will be applying that one. So this we will be doing on a very in a frequent way. Frequently, if you do, you are going to be safe from that one. So there are different controls which are there as part of that. Just for the information side, we will not be going too detailed into this one. This is what is available as per the latest announced standard. We got the 27002, a new version published recently. The recent version of the 27002, you have these 4 categories that are there, and then these are the controls that are there as part of that. If you are familiar with the older one, we have the older version of 27002, where we had 114 controls. Now the number of controls have gone down, but not much actually changed. It is almost like it is having the same thing there, but only thing the presentation is something different. There are minor changes that are happening there. Okay. Now we are stepping into the thing what we want to discuss here as part of this. Now, what is the difference between the information security and data privacy? Now, one thing is that both are related to information. Now, when we talk about information security, most of the time it is going to be generic. Whenever we talk about data privacy, it is going to be specific. So that is the thing what we talk here. So information security protect the sensitive information from, so whatever thing that we want to bring in as part of this information security, the control that you are going to bring, most of the controls are going to be generic controls. Whereas when we talk about data privacy, okay, so we were talking about this. So data privacy is something where you are going to give ability for individuals. So they will be in a position to determine or decide what data, their data, how that can be used. That's a major difference here. So that's what we see here when we talk about data security and data privacy. In data security, most of the things, most of the decisions are going to be taken by the organization. It is always going to be asset centric, because why I call this not an organization centric, why it is asset centric, because the control that we are going to bring, most of the time we will be applying those controls on the assets. So it is going to be more, the decisions are going to be taken at the asset level. Whereas when we talk about data privacy, we always, that should always be based on the data subject or the data principle centric. Now, the major difference is here, if I'm an employee, all my information is going to be with my employer. My date of birth, my salary, my tax, everything is going to be with the employer. Now, I assume that my information is going to be secure, that my information is not going to be used or misused by anybody else, knowingly or unknowingly, where from the place where my information is stored. Now, how that is going to be secured? And if I want to say that, no, my information can be used only for this purpose, do I have a right for that? That is what we talk about data privacy. In data privacy, the individual whose data is going to be saved or stored or protected, he can make decision. So this is the one, the ability of individuals to determine who can access their personal information. That is coming at the data privacy level. Whereas at the information security level, it is only the generic thing, how an organization is going to secure or how an organization is going to protect the information that they have. It is going to be the generic protection what we talk about, and data privacy is always going to be how you are allowing the individuals so that they can decide what the organization can do with the data of that particular person, the individual. So individual, there are different names that are used. Data subject is what is used in GDPR, and you have data principle, which is used as part of a PDPA, or even you can take a case of 27701, we call that as a data principle. So depending on where it is, this is an individual what we talk about, whose data that we have as part of our asset. Now, another thing that we have is whenever we talk about the individual, it need not be a specific person. It need not be employees always. It can be anybody. So it can be a client, customer. It can be a visitor to our portal, or it can also be a person who is visiting casually to our organization, or it can be an employee who's already working, or the shareholders. Anybody is going to be an individual. So they will be having certain information. If we, as an organization, if we are going to have their information for some purpose, we need to let them know that that is what we are going to be part of this privacy related one. So we are going to let them know that we are going to have their information, and we are also going to get their consent, whether we can use that or not. If we use, to what purpose that we are going to use. And that option is always with the individual. That is what is a data privacy. That's a difference between these two. But one of the things here is data privacy is going to sit on information security. So you have an information security management system. So you need to have this initially, the base should be there, information security system will be there. On that only data privacy system will be sitting upon. So that's how it is going to be built. We'll see that why it is essential. We are going to see that one later. So when we talk about data protection, there are multiple categories you can see. So it's a different level. So this is the last level. What we have is a data privacy, which is going to be specific to the individual, whereas we have the traditional data protection that we have, how we are protecting that, where it is more, in most of the cases, it is going to be related to hardware. Initially, if you see that 30 years back, we were focusing on the hardware whenever we talk about data protection. Whereas later we started working on the software, that is the assets, information assets, what we call. Then we started even the way that we are going to have access and other things. So we focused on that one, data security. And then the data privacy is a thing that has come, which is more precise because it is going to be specific to that particular individual. These are the three categories that we have with respect to data protection. And the way that you are going to protect each of these categories is going to differ depending on how do you want to have that one. So depending on the processes that are going to be done and each of these things that are going to be there. Okay, now we talk about privacy data. So we need to have something called data. When we talk about data privacy, we need to have the personal data. So that is a definition that is there. Any information that an organization has about an individual, which is going to reveal the identity of the individual. We call that as a PIA, personally identifiable information. You may be having data. So this personal data is one thing, which is always, you will be in a position to identify whose information is that by some or by name or there are going to be some certain indicators that are going to be there. Using these indicators, you should, if you are in a position to identify whose data there, then that is called personal data. And that is what is going to be vulnerable one, because these are the things that is what we want to protect. If this is going to be known, then people are going to make use of that. When something is, if it is going to be healthcare related one, then in case of that, if some surgery or some treatment is going on, people will be knowing about that. But as a privacy matter, I do not want that to be known by everyone. So that is where the clash comes, and that is where these things are going to have a difference. So this is what we will be always focusing on. And in this case, personal data is always going to be one thing that we are going to identify what we call as a personal data. So anything, any indicator that is there from which you should be in a position to identify the person whose data is there. That's what is there. Now, what we do with this data privacy, there are three elements that we are going to do that one. One thing is rights of the individual. That's what we said, because when we are defining this, the way that we have defined, the first thing that we defined here is data privacy. In this data privacy, it says the ability of the individuals to determine. So what do they determine? They determine only the rights, what they want to. So they want to, whether they want to be there, whether they allow us to use the data, allow the organization to use the data or not, at what level it can be done. So that's a right. That's the first thing. So when you talk about data privacy, that should be there. That's the first case. And when you want to have that one, you need to have a procedure, because the data is going to be with us. And then you need to have a process that is defined so that all these things are going to be taken part there. And you'll also be doing certain processes based on which you are going to, either you are going to use the data or you will be addressing the requirements that are coming from the individual. And then the third one is always compliance, which is going to be, as the name suggests, we will be complying to certain mandatory and statutory laws that are going to be there. So when you are already certified for 27701, so we need to comply to that standard. So for that, whatever the mandatory thing that we'll have to do, we need to do as part of this. So these are the three elements that are related to data privacy. Main thing is rights. So, and why do you want to now the thing is, the question that will come is, what these guys or what this organization is going to do with the data of individual. Now it can do a lot. Now there are different ways you can think on that. If I'm going to consider this individual person as an employee, so a normal company is there and there are 20,000 employees working in that organization. Now you have an entire database of every individual and of course some level of dependent information also with the organization. Now, this information is going to be there, and this is a marketable information. If anybody wants to know, like who is having, say, pay scale or a monthly earning, which is crossing 15 lakhs. So you are readily have that information with you. So somebody is want to do some marketing thing on that one, they want to do that one, that information is going to be useful for them. Now the organization, since it has that information, the question comes whether that organization can make use of that information or not. Now that is the process that what we talk about here. So whenever we talk about process here with respect to private data privacy, the process what we talk about is how that information, individual information is going to be used. As an employee, that information is going to be restricted. They are not going to use for that purposes. But it is going to be there for different purposes. Now, the same concept, if you are going to look at the customers, now you say that Amazon, there are millions of users are there for Amazon. So when these users, when they are going to access that Amazon portal website, now there are going to be always different activities they are going to do. Now, when I'm going to search or when I'm going to get something from that one, onto something to be delivered, there is going to be always a pattern. If Amazon, that's what it does normally. Most of this portal thing, what they do is they do it in a two different way. One, they are trying to identify the habit, the way that I'm spending, my spending habit. So they keep seeing that if I'm going to continuously buy electronic items, then they know that this guy is spending more on electronic items. They're trying to push that more electronic things to me. So that is one information that they gather from my personal data, because even if I'm going to click there, every click is recorded as part of Amazon. So any click that I do there, it is going to save that, and then it is going to have some meaning there. And that meaning they gather it. So at the individual level, they are going to collect certain things which they are going to use for promotion purposes. So now the promotion purpose, they are doing it, but I should know it. That is what is a privacy law, what we talk about. So when they say that, after all, I come to you to buy something, and that's all I did. So whatever I bought, I paid for it. That is the only transaction I do with you. But whatever I do there, I'm searching something, whatever I do there, you are following me, tracking me, and then you are storing it, and then you are trying to make use of that. So in that case, that comes privacy things. Then I'll have to say that whether I'm going to give that control to you or not, whether I give that right to you or not. That is what is going to be the right of that. So this is one thing when you are talking about individual, not even Amazon, everybody does that. The other part of that is you are going to see the pattern there. That means in a particular place. So when a particular thing is sold in a particular, how they're going to do the region wise, they are going to see which product is moving, or season wise, they see what product is moving. All these things are going to be the collective information of individual behavior. So individual behavior is going to be collected, and then they are going to extrapolate that. And then based on that, they will be in a position to project what is going to be the thing which will sell more. And that information they are using. So this information, again, that is a process. So you have different processes that are there. Based on the process, that processes are going to be always used. So this is always going to be there. What I'm going to see here is how my data is going to be used. So it is going to be advantageous for both. Sometimes it's good for us because we come to know what we are interested in. So when I'm going to buy electronic items, then it is always going to push me more electronic items related information. That is the right what we talk about. And the procedure what we talk about is the processes that they do to do that one. When they want to do for a particular thing, promotion, they are going to pick information from the individual behavior, and then they do that. The third part is going to be the compliance part. That's how they make use of the personal data. Okay. Now come, so when it is there, when we say that they can do that one, now we'll have to think that, so if just because they have my data, will they be in a position to whatever they want? That is what is a lawful process comes. So that is where the question, that is where the whole thing comes. Just because you say that, it doesn't mean that you can use the data, because that data is mine. So now I'm going to decide whether it is, you can make use of that or not. That is what, so I need to give my consent. That is what I'm interested. So in that case, that is what is the thing here. First thing is, what are the processes which are going to be considered as lawful or legal with respect to the, that organization which is going to make use of the individual's data. Now, consent is always going to be given by the individual, the data subject or the data principal. And then based on the consent, these people are going to make use of that information of the individual, or they are going to include that individual in a specific process. There are going to be multiple processes that will be happening depending on how they want to make use of that. So depending on that, you are going to do that one. So that's a consent. Consent is always one thing that you will have to get from the individual. Without consent, you should not do. That is a lawful processing, what we talk about. The second point is performance of the contract. This normally we do. This contract, when you see this, the word may think that where we do. With Amazon, what type of contract we have. So contract is not every time it's going to be such a procedure that normally we think of. Like when we access something, even in this case, when you are going to access something, or whenever we are making a transaction in our bank on online transaction, it always asks us to check something, and then it's forcing us to check a checkbox. Now that is the contract that is a e-contract what we have for every activity that it is supposed to do. The application or that is application is on behalf of the organization it does. So the organization is going to get our consent in form of a contract. So it is going to flash a message stating that are you interested in getting similar mails? Yes, no. If you say yes, then you are going to get the alerts. Otherwise, it is not going to. And whenever cookies are going to be installed, it is going to let us know. And that is what is the consent. So through they are going to say, we are going to give the consent, and then there is going to be a contract. We say that, yes, you do that maybe for 1 year, 2 years, sometimes it is going to be timeless. Sometimes you can take it back. So depending on the severity of that, there are multiple ways by which we are going to have a contract with that one. Now, the third part is the legitimate interest. Now, legitimate interest is always going to be something which the organization is not going to use for their commercial purposes, but the information is needed. Now, recently we have seen that a lot of things there. When the COVID situation has happened, there's a lot of requirement, that a lot of information was there. Everything is individual information. So as a COVID patient, so what are the medicine, what type of symptoms he had, how long he suffered, what are the problems he had, what type of medication treatment he had. All this information is going to be, definitely it is going to be a privacy information, but still these information are going to be meaningful for a person who is going to be in the similar situation. That they can make use of that. They're going to see the trend of that, and then they will be in a position that is for the for some purpose, for research purpose, they are going to make use of that. Now, in such cases, that's a legitimate interest. What we, in such cases, it is going to be used. In such cases, it does not need a consent from personnel. Sometimes it is also that for public interest side, you are going to do that one. Otherwise, we will not be having how people suffered and what type of precautions they had, or what type of treatment they had when plague was there 100 years back. So those informations are still with us. The records are still with us, and we are making, that is going to be lessons learned for us. We are making use of that, where the information of individuals are there, but individual name is not there. So we still use that one. So that is what we are going to see, that legitimate interest and the public interest, both are going to be there. If there is going to be an interest, then you are going to, so this is a processing activity that a data subject would generally anticipate from an organization, because it has already shown, you know that you are going to send me a mailer, because I know that, because once I visited your site and then I opted for it, I know that I'm going to get. Suppose if I'm buying Acrobat recently, then it is going to ask me that, are you interested in getting our mails? Then when I'm consciously say yes, then that is a legitimate interest what we talk about. I'm going to get the mails from them. The public interest is something where the one occasion, the example what I said, where you are going, the individual information is going to be used for generic purpose, for some which is going to be useful for the society. So that is what is going to be used as the last one. The legal requirement is also going to be there. When judicial requirements are there, it is responsibility of any provider or any controller who is going to have the data to provide that information, what the government is asking for. So examples of legitimate interest in the corporate scenarios. Yep, I'll give a simple scenario. When you talk about legitimate interest, okay, so I'm an employee of a corporate company. Now I have taken the insurance. So when I have taken the insurance for me and my dependents, I'll have to give all the information to them, and they also have my all the documents are with them. So if a legitimate interest is, in this case, they are going to make use of that when they are, so this information is going to be with the insurance provider about me, my age, my ailment history, whatever I have, and about my dependents, their age and other details, and the ailment history that they have. All this information, insurance company is going to use that. Based on that only, they are going to decide. So every year they are going to see throughout that year how many cases have come. They are going to do that, and then based on that, they are going to fix a premium for the next year. And that there we know that they are going to make use of our information. That is what is a legitimate interest. We know that these guys are going to make use of that. And we also know that they are going to use only for that. If they are going to use it for some other purpose, then it is illegitimate. That is not lawful. Whereas those certain, sometimes we are not given consent, but still we know that they are going to use that one. So they should not share that information. That's the main thing. Yeah. So this is for our purpose they are doing. They are going to make use of that. Public interest is something where that information is, you are going to see that how many insurance have come. So if the government knows for during this from say 2020 January to this one 2.5 years, how many insurance payments have been made for COVID cases. Then if they are asking that, every insurance provider is supposed to give that information. Sometimes government may ask, you tell me like from family, more than one, how many people you have done. So these are the analysis that if government wants to do, then in that case, they are because they have certain reason for that and they will have to do that one. That is one case. The legal requirement is something where there is a problem with the judicial case that has happened, and then the court can ask that information, and it is the responsibility of the organization to provide that one. So it varies and depend on for what purpose the information is required and what is a legitimate way of giving that one. So the legitimate interest is always going to be the one which I agree that this is a purpose they have that, so they are making use of that. I know that. So I have already given the consent and they are going to make use of that. One thing I'll tell you, legitimate purpose as an employee, they know my account number. My account number, my bank account number is my privacy information. That's a PII. Now, why should I give to my employer? Now, the question is, yes, I give them, I know that it's a legitimate interest because when they are going to send the salary, unless I'm going to give them the account number, I'll not get the salary. So that is the legitimate interest, what we talk about. So things that are known, and we have accepted that, and we have, though there are no consent given as such, there is no consent given by us in return to our organization stating that I'm going to give that one and you can use only for salary transaction. We never give that consent, but it is understood. It is a legitimate interest of that. So in the employer relationship, if you are talking about in that terms, if you are talking about this, it is going to be applicable. The same thing you can talk in the healthcare side also. When there are going to be references, one doctor is there, you have some ailment, and then he's going to check that one. So he can do that one. So in that case also, the legitimate interest is going to be applied. Depend on where you are going to apply that. Okay. Now we are coming to rights. What type of rights a person can have? Now the consumer, what we talk about, can be applied. It is not only the consumer, but for our discussion sake, it is always easy, but it is a data subject or the data principle what we talk about, or the individual whose information or the data is going to be with the organization. Now, what rights they have? So we already have seen they are the people who will be having certain rights. So these are the rights that are possible. Main thing is right to access the personal data. You have my data and I should be in a position to see whenever I want. So Yahoo or Gmail, they have that when you are creating a Gmail, they are getting all our data of birth, everything is going to be there. Now we give that because knowingly we give that one, and it is again an option. If you want to opt out, you can do that once. There are certain things which are mandatory. Now, when you give that one, then we always have access to that particular data. I can view that, you go to the setup, and then if you want, you can make changes also. That's a right. Rectification, same thing. You can make changes whenever you want. You have a right to change that one. Right to erase. So far, I have been saying that like Facebook, I've given an option that my date of birth can be visible to everyone. Now I'm going to change that one. So that is actually changing one. When I want to remove certain information, I made that I gave some information about my qualification and other thing. I want to erase that. So if I want to decide, if I decide that, I can do that one. Right to restrict data processing. This is also going to be there when it is going to ask you whether I can use this for this purpose or not. So you say that no. So when you are going to say you are making a payment, and when you are visiting a particular portal and the portal has, you want to register it. No, if you register, we will be sending you a mailer. So we say that no, that is a restriction what we talk about. We do not want that, we restrict that. Right to be notified is one thing where whenever there is a thing that is happening, I should be notified. Whenever there is like Gmail does. whenever you are trying to access your mail from a different machine, from a different location, it sends a notification to us. So that sort of notification, what we want, whenever a process is done, we come to know that how this is happening, why this is happening, who are there. Now, these rights are always going to be there. This is the main thing that I'm going to say. There are different types of rights that any customer is going to have. Now, the other thing that we have as part of that is sources. From which sources these things are going to happen. My data is going to be residing in multiple places. So it can be in the centralized sources. It can be in the email server. So anybody who is going to access email server, he will be getting access to all my information there without my knowledge. So that is at the email servers, voicemail servers, server logs, location tracking servers, CCTV recording, network traffic info, the same thing, service-based thing. So I'm using certain service, I'm booking a ticket through some agency, my information is there. So those information, if I make a financial transaction, that is going to be there. These are all service-based one. These are all, I have an account there or something so that my information is there. And some cases, they will also be accessing my information from the things that are with me. So if I'm going to have a Facebook ID, then my information is going to be there, or the photos that I have in my mobile, metadata that calls, the logs of calls that I have in my phone, or location tracking based on the GPS. Even in fact, every month we get a mail from Gmail telling us that wherever we visited last month. So that information that they have, that is the thing, that is actually breach of my privacy. Why Gmail should know where I have gone, what right he has. That's a thing what we are talking about here. So data sources can be anything. It can be the place where centrally my data is going to be residing, or wherever I make transaction, even if I'm going to make one single transaction, my information is going to be there. Or in some cases, it is going to be residing with me and people are accessing that. And so that I'm involved in that transaction, that information is going to be with me. So sources are going to be plenty, and you are going to make use of that. Now, key sources of data privacy risk. So you have multiple things what we have talked about. One thing is we need to know the inventory of data. So data inventory, where what type of things that are there. So their inventory is going to be a big source for the privacy risk. Because privacy risks are always going to be hitting this data inventory first. The way that we are going to classify third-party relationship. So when you are going to give this inventory to some, you are sharing that information to somebody, then it is also going to be a source for privacy risk. Portability and erasure, wherever we say that we are going to port the data or we are going to share the data, there also we will be having that one. So consent, wherever we give consent, oversight and monitoring, these are certain sources where data privacy risks are possible. Just a thing that how these things can happen. These are the more you are exposed, the more risks you are going to have. If I'm going to have only one mail ID, that too only with one provider, then I am safe. If I'm going to have four different things, then my risk is more. So the more you are going to use, the more risk that you are going to have. So that's the thing. So sources are plenty of sources are there, then you are going to have more risk. Now another concept here is the subject access request. We talk about the data subject or data principle. So when we talk about that, now we have also seen that this is a thing. We have certain rights here. Now how these things are going to be given, that is what we are going to see here. Now, when a data subject is there, that subject can make a request. That's what we have seen. So when they are going to make a request, either they can do directly, or in case if it is going to be a data subject who is a major, in that case, there is going to be a person who will be on behalf of major person. He is going to use that one. That's a minor data subject. There's going to be another person who will be doing that one. Or sometimes, even if it is going to be a major, then the third party, you'll be having a person to talk on behalf of you. So either case, it is going to be data subject directly talking, or it is going to be for data subject, there is going to be a third party who is going to talk. But whichever way, there are always going to be requests that are going to come. This request is the subject access request. You are accessing something from, you need something from them. So when that comes, then that is going to be followed up, and then you are going to raise this is data principle perspective. You are going to raise a request. You keep following it up. When you have some concern, you are going to raise it. And then even the concerns are not met, you are going to comply that. So this is the flow that we have for any request that we are going to do. Now, one of the things that we have is the activities that are going to be there. Once the request is raised, what is the responsibility of the organization to provide? So these are the things that are going to be there. There are certain exemptions that will be there, but for every request, there is going to be a response that is expected from the organization. And we are going to follow up as an individual. This is what is a data subject access request, what we have. Now, what access is that? What request is that? That's going to be something different. Now, what are the trends that we have in data privacy? What is going to be that? So we are already feeling that one. So more and more countries are following this data privacy. That's a thing. So when every company is going to have their own data privacy, then it is going to be more opportunities that we have in the industry. Then there is always going to be regulatory pressure, which is increasing. Actually, any country that is going to formulate an act, and then they make that as a mandatory one, then that is going to pressure the host country and also the countries which are going to do business. One of the things that we have in India, we are more worried about GDPR than PDPB. PDPB is Indian one. The reason for that is most of the companies which are working with Europe, they need to follow the GDPR. So that's a thing here. So when India is also going to have this PDPB implemented in full swing, then all the other countries which are going to be doing business with it, they will also be, there is going to be a regulatory pressure on them also. Then opportunities are going to increase. Then there is always multi-standard compliance. This is going to be a very challenging one that we are going to have very soon, because currently we have 2, 3. When you talk about this privacy related one, you have GDPR, and then you have from US side California one, and the other you have Canada one. These are the primary thing that we have. When now Australia, New Zealand, everyone has started, India also started. When every country is going to have their own data privacy act, then there is always going to be multi-standard compliance. That's going to be very difficult to cope with, because there are going to be different requirements from each of this, and then you need to have a process, and still you should be fulfilling requirements or needs and expectations from every country. What is the regulatory agencies that are there? So that's going to be a major thing, and because of that, there's always going to be a demand. And of course, now we were just talking about, yeah, yes, please. Somebody has raised. Atul, you want to say something? Okay. The thing is, what we talk about is the data security and data privacy system. So we have a clarity now, very much clarity is there. What is the difference between data security and data privacy? So data security is the one which is readily available. Solutions for that are readily available, because that's easy, because it is generic. So since it is generic, solutions can be done. Whereas when you talk about data privacy, it is still emerging. So because data privacy is always related to an individual, and the data that you store, that should be based on that. So it is now emerging. There are a lot of ideas that are there on how to implement that. So integrating this data security and data privacy is a main thing that is going to come for the next 10 years. So when we talk about data security, that should be data privacy also along with that. So data security goes at the generic level, data privacy goes as the attribute level, attribute of every entity of data that you have. That is how you are going to, when you are designing the database, when you want to have privacy as part of the database design, then you will be thinking on how we are going to provide that at the attribute level of every entity that we have. And that is going to be entirely a different design, what we normally think when we want to have a security for that database. When you want to have a security for that database, it is always going to be at the row level, but this one is at the cell level. I'm talking in terms of the table. So when you want to have at a cell level, that's going to be much more challenging than this one, because GUI itself is going to be very difficult for us to get that one. So there you'll get a lot of opportunities. Then you have increased awareness among the public, because public they get this awareness that their information is being used and they have right to do something. They can either get some information or they can stop that. So the awareness is now increasing, and the more awareness, when it is going to be there, then there are always going to be more transactions that are going to come from the public, and it is going to bring more opportunities for work there. And of course, compliance roles are going to be more, because we say that the regulatory pressures are increasing. Because of that, we are going to have, and the increased hosted services. One thing that we are going to come is data protection as a service. So this can also be part of that, how it can be given as a service. That's a main area which is emerging. So these are the trends that are there in the data privacy area, at least for the next 10 years. You will see a lot of opportunities here. And it is not only in India, everywhere across the world, because it is emerging. Like even in the countries where this is already there, even GDPR, which is there, it is not implemented at the database level. It is implemented only at the process level. You need to think on the database level to bring the data privacy. So it is now open, and it's a very hot area where you can go for getting opportunities there. Now, this is the trend, what we see here. I got it from this source. Now, the way that data protection and privacy legislation is there are 71% countries are already have some legislation. It doesn't mean that they are in action, but they have some legislation which is already there. 9% countries, they are still in draft legislation. 15 countries, no legislation at all. You have that this red one. And then there are 5 countries with no data at all. So if you see that at least 71% plus this 9, if you are going to add, 80% of the countries across the world, they have some legislation. So within 10 years, 80% of the countries definitely will have. And if all these 80 countries are going to have their own data protection law, then it is going to be big challenge, because it is going to, because nowadays doing a business with multiple countries is a simple thing. So when you do that one, then it should not be, it's going to be a very challenging one to fulfill all the countries' requirement that we have. That is where the opportunity is also there. Big opportunity is there. So this is my thing, because regulatory pressure will increase because it is multifold. As long as I'm going to deal only with US or only with Europe, then I have only that part. So one act, I'm going to work on that. So my system, my process is going to be tuned to this one system, GDPR. Now, from US, you have got, and Canada also you have. Now, when I'm going to do business with all the 3, the system that I'm going to have in my organization should be catering or fulfilling the needs of all the 3. Tomorrow, India is going to have its own system. Then I'll have to change. Then later on, all these countries are going to get. For every country, it's going to be different. There are always going to be tailoring, and my process is going to be always dynamic. So my process, the way that I'm going to do is going to be very, very challenging. And that is where we will see that there are other things which also emerge, the commonality between that, and there should be a common thing that will come over a period of time, so that there will be common law across the countries, the way that Europe has now. So if that is the case, implementation is going to be easier. That is what we will be looking for. That may come in future. That's why regulatory pressures are always going huge, because it is expected from the country where we are operating, and also in the countries where we have our business. Okay. Now we are going to spend some time on seeing that what is available in 27701. So far what we have seen is just a data privacy related one. We got an idea about what is that. Now we are going to see that how 27701 as a standard, what does it offer? Again, it is going to be an overview. We will not be having enough time to go through each of that. We're going to have just an overview of that. Now, what is 27701? The people who are already familiar with ISO, they should be familiar with these numbers. ISO is an international organization. They have published thousands of, literally over 19,000 standards they have published on various domains and technologies for different things. So anything that you name it, you will be getting a standard from ISO. Now, you have a series of standards that are there for information technology. So this 27,000 family has a lot of standards that are specific to IT. And we have, the first one is 27,001. You have family of standards. So 27,000 is a series, and that you have multiple standards that are available. Normally in one family, there will be 1 or 2 standards which are certifiable standards. All the other standards are going to be helping us to get these certifiable standards implemented. Like when you go for 27,001 implementation, we will be using 27,000 and 27,002 as part of that, because that is what is needed for us to get that one. Sometimes 27,005 also. Now this 27,701 is a specific standard, which is a certifiable standard. This is going to take care of privacy thing. So privacy information management system, that is the standard that we have, 27,701. And the scope of that is simple, because this is actually built on 27,001. And that's the thing. So when you want to implement 27701, it is not possible for us without implementing 27001. So for information security, you need to have 27001 implemented. On that, you will be adding some more. That is what is going to give us 27701. Now, there is going to be another challenge here. Whenever we talk about 27001, 27001 is a generic standard, and the controls are given here as part of 27002. There are 114 controls. We have seen that. Now there is a new version of 27002 has come 2022 this year. So that is less number of controls that we have. These controls are giving away, or these are actually helping us to implement what is expected in 27001. So when we want to go for implementing 27001, 27002 should also be implemented by default. Now, when you want to go for implementing 27701, you need to have 27001, because the way that 27001 defined is that everything is going to be extension of what is already there in ISMS. So ISMS is going to be extended for privacy information management system. You're going to see that how it is going to be there. There are new roles which are added here as part of that. What we have is a PII controllers and PII processes. These are the roles which are added as part of this 27701. Now 27701, if you say this is the thing that we have, this is processing PII within an ISMS. This is what is the main thing. You have ISMS, and then based on that, you will have to do that one. Now, it is not, you can claim that you don't have to have 27001. That's fine. You don't have to go by 27001, but you need to still have a ISMS. So irrespective of 27001, you can have ISMS also. This is only a standard. So if you are going to comply to that, it is going to certify, but it doesn't, nobody is going to prevent us by having our own ISMS. So logically speaking, if you want to do, you don't have to go for 27001 also, but it is ideal way of going for that is go for implementing this, and then that is implementing ISMS. Over that, you are going to have this PIMS. So that's the structure that we have. There is a way the scope is defined for 27001. Yes, it is not yet come. Yeah, the question is, we have some changes that are happening in 27002. There's a published, we got the change that is there. With respect to that, there is going to be a change in 27001 also. Now, since it is going to be dependent on this, will this be changed? Yes, it will be changed. As of now, there are no information that is there. It is not published. So when it's going to come, but it is not going to affect us because there's not much of change that has happened with the latest version of 27002 and the previous version, because it is more of a, so a few changes are there, very easily you can accommodate that one. Okay, now this is how it is sitting on 27001. Let me spend some time on this. So there are three things that are there. What you see here is 27001, then you have 27002, and then 27701. We are interested in getting this 27701 implemented because that is what is PIMS, Privacy Information Management System. Now for Privacy Management Information System, you need to have ISMS. For ISMS, what we have is 27001. Now every ISO standard we have, most of the popular standards that we have now, there are still standards which are not using this particular format, but most of the popular standards that are there, they use this structure, the common structure they have. So you'll be having 10 classes. Out of that, the first 3 are non-implementable one. Classes from 4 to 10, these 7 classes are implementable classes. So it talks about how we are going to implement 27001. This is the names that are given here are common, whether you are going for 9001 or 14,000 or 27,001 or even 45,001, all are going to be same. But only thing, the way that it is going to be interpreted based on the domain. So if it is going to be environment management system, the way that you are going to have planning, the way that that will be different. So that will be like even in leadership itself, there is going to be something added there. When you talk about 45,001, there is a subclass which is added as part of this. So interpretations are going to be same, whereas at the top level, the classes that you see here, these are the 7 classes that are there, which are going to be same. So that is what is there as part of this ISO 27001. The similar thing is going, you can see that as part of 27001 because it is only a mapping. We'll come to that later. Now, once we have this one, now to the the uniqueness of 27001 is, along with that, ISO has given certain controls also. All the other standards, most of the standard, maximum number of standards that we have, ISO does not talk about how we are going to implement your operation. It gives a generic operation as part of that. If you are going to say that 14,001 as part of the operation, it will talk about specific to that one. It does not say that how we are going to have your controls. Whereas only for 27,001, it has come out with a list. So you have this whole thing, 27,002, which is another standard as part of the same family, which gives a set of 114 controls. Now the number is going to change because of the new version, but still I'm using the older one, 2013 version here, because that is what is used here in 2019 version of that. So it's going to, this is using, as for this 2019, it uses 2013 of both. Now in this one, these are the classes that are there. Under these classes, there are going to be multiple controls. That is, for every class, under this, there are going to be multiple 2-3 controls will be there. Altogether, it is 114 controls. Now, what are controls? You go back to the one what we are discussing earlier. So you have a project, you want to implement that, you have a plan and execution, and you will also be having monitoring and control. So I'm going to identify the risks that are there in my domain. And for every risk that I have identified, I'll be having some control measure. And that is what is this. So it talks about the areas where risk can occur. I can have risk related to asset. I can have risk related to access control, related to cryptography. So it is actually what it has given is segregated the areas in a different areas as classes. And for each of the classes, it is suggesting us you need to have these controls. So each control is by itself, you need to implement that. Now, when I say that I'm going to have operations implemented, this operations is actually extended to these controls. Not only operation, actually, if you see that there are certain things which are related to support also. Now, this is what is extended here. What you see here, whatever is in red is used as part of this 27701. So entire thing is used. Whichever is marked in red here, there is going to be specific change with respect to 27, or it is going to be extended here. There are something added here to cover the requirements of privacy management system. So that is what, so these are the things wherever you have in context, in planning, and all these things that are except the 17th one, all these things, you have something which is told we need to add specific to privacy management system. So that is the indication that we have. So when you are looking at this standard 27701, it goes by this first one. First part is going to be based on the classes of 27001. And it says that what are the changes that it needs. Changes are the extension of that. So it talks about this changes in the context and changes in the planning. And when it comes to the second part, you see that 27002, for each of this control that are there, what is the extra thing that is required to cover the privacy part of that. That is how this 27701 is actually defined. Now, this one thing, when you look for that one, there is a different way of looking at this. And again, and I don't say when it is not in red, I don't say that it is not going to be touched, which means these are the direct changes that you are going to go. These are directly extended. But when you are going to have something on privacy, some privacy related one, definitely there is going to be a change in improvement also. Not by the process, but by the way that you are going to implement. Interpretation is going to be different when you are going to have improvement, you decide for privacy. So though the wordings that are there as part of this is going to be same, but still the way that you are going to get meaning for 27001, if you say take improvement, the way that I am going to interpret improvement for 27001, the same thing that I'm going to interpret for 27701 is going to be different because the expectations are going to be different. So that way, if you see that, even if it is going to be there in this case, so information security aspect of business continuity management, it says that it is not extended. It means it is already there. It is going to take care of that. But it doesn't mean that there is nothing specially needed to be done as part of this 277. That's not a meaning here. You need to cover that part also, part of that, which means everything is going to be specific to 27701. There is going to be a way that you are going to interpret is going to be different. So when I talk about leadership, I need to have more things that are there because when I'm going to have only 27001, my leadership is going to focus only on that. Whereas when I'm going to have 27701 also, my leadership is going to have more. So that is what is going to get added. But the definition is going to be same. That's not a change. That's a meaning here. Now, again, when you are going for this one, as I said, this is a common template. You have this as a common template. And when this common template is going to be there, the way that it is going to be interpreted, that is where you are going to make a difference on how it is going to be implemented for a specific standard. That's how we do that one. And these controls are important because these are all applied on various areas as part of our information security. But wherever we talk about privacy, that is actually sitting on these control, these assets, these information areas. So anything that we want to do here will have an effect, will have an influence on these controls also. That's why it is given there. So when we say that it is 27001, this is a certifiable one. When we are going for implementing 27001, we by default, we need to go for that. Okay, so we were talking about this. So when we go for this implementing the next one, 27001, we'll have to have all three together. That is what is a thing that we have. And the way that it is implemented, the way that is inbuilt, you can see that one. I just wanted to give a bird's eye view of how you can go for implementing 27701. Now in this one, whatever is in red, as I mentioned earlier, each of this red, you'll have to extend this. There are certain things that you'll have to do extra for implementing 27001 because the extension of this, whatever we want to extend here, actually that is extended in these classes and these two classes of 27001 and 27002. That is where you are going to do that one. But indirectly also, all the things are going to be changing with respect to 27701. Because when we talk about improvement, as I mentioned earlier, when we are talking about 27001 improvement, that means improvement with respect to information security. When you are going to set the context for 27701, there we will be thinking of improving the processes that are specific to PIMS. So in that way also, with respect to the context, other things are also, there are going to be some changes, but only thing, the interpretation is going to be specific to 27001. So when you are going for 27001, the way that it is given, it says that it is extending. It doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about these things at all. You need to, because the interpretation is going to be same for whether it is going to be 27701 or 27701, 701 or 27001. That's understanding here. You have these 18 classes as part of our ISO 2013 version. And within that, you have 114 controls, and all these controls are going to be there. That is going to be there as part of the scope of 27701 also. Now, this 2019 version of this is referring 2013 version of 27002 and this one. So when there is going to be a newer version, probably the new versions of 27001 and 27002 will be referred there. Till then, we'll have to go there. And the changes that you are going to bring in is also not much actually, the change that has happened in 27002. So it is going to be carried forward as such. So that is what we have as part of this structure, what we talk about. So when we go to the next one, first thing is, as I said, it is a policies that we'll have to look for, because that is the first thing. So when you want to bring a system implemented, first thing is we need to have a policy. Now, this policy is always going to talk about the wish of the organization, wish of the top management. So if I'm going to have a PIMS as part of my organization, what is my wish? Why do I want to go for PIMS? So that is what is going to be reflected as part of the policy that you are going to coin. So policy is always going to give the commitment from the management. So that is what we have here. You need to have a policy set for, that is, you are going to coin the policy with respect to data privacy and what it should be addressing. So it should address the appropriate purpose of the organization. There is always one thing in all the ISO standard, you can notice this one. There's a way that it is given, the policy objective is very nicely given. If you try to visualize this, every organization has something called a vision. Vision is going to be, again, it is a qualitative statement. So it is going to talk about the wish of the management. Where do they want that organization to be after 7 or 8 years? So that is what is going to be the vision of the organization. Now that vision is going to be qualitative, which is going to be more of a descriptive nature, and you will not be possible to you will not want to measure it. So for that purpose, you will be having multiple missions created for that. So each of these missions is going to help to achieve that vision what the organization has. Now, one of such mission is to have a ISMS system implemented or to have a PIMS implemented in the organization. So when you have a management system that is going to be there, again, what is the purpose of that? So that sole purpose of that particular management system should be reflected as part of the policy. So in any management system, the policy statement is going to be the root of that. From the policy statement, there are going to be two branches. On one side, you are going to define how the processes are going to be. From the policy, you are going to have procedures, and then it goes on at different levels, the way that things are going to be done. On the other side, you will also be having objectives. The objectives are going to be measurable one. These are measured because the policy is going to be a qualitative one. It is going to be more textual description. So you will not know whether we have achieved it or not. The only way to do that, and again, policy is for, normally it is for 7 or 8 years. It will not change. It is going to be permanent as long as there is no major change in the organization with respect to number of employees and other things. So when that is going to be for a longer term, whereas the objectives are always going to be set for annual one. So you will be always having an annual plan where the objectives are going to be set. Now you will be deriving multiple objectives from any policy. So one policy, which is a descriptive one, you will be having multiple objectives. Each of these objectives are going to be measurable one. So you are also going to have a time period. So normally it is going to be 1 year. And for our easy purpose, we'll be having that as a financial year, so that we will be having an opportunity for having some budget fix for that for the throughout that year. So you have some objectives. That is at the second level. So we started from the vision. From the vision, you have a mission, multiple missions. One of the mission is to get PIMS or ISMS implemented. So for that mission, you have a policy. From the policy, you have multiple objectives. Each of this is going to be a measurable one. From these objectives, you are going to have KPIs you are going to define. So the first level, you are going to define the KPIs at the department level, then at the managers level, and then at the end, you are going to drill it down to the individual employee level. So when you are going to define the KPIs, it is always going to be top-down approach. You are starting from that, and then from the objective, you are going to drill it down. And when you are going to evaluate them, it is always going to be bottom-up. That is the way that all the standards are given here. So when you are going to evaluate that, you are going to first see whether the individual employees have completed, fulfilled that or not. You are going to roll it up and then see whether the managers have achieved that or not. Roll it up, department KPI is achieved or not. When you are going to roll up all the KPIs, you are going to see whether the objective is achieved or not. When you see that all the objectives are achieved, then you have achieved the policy that you have. And that is why you need to have this policy defined for every management system. Now, again, why it is given in plural? Now, there is going to be one policy which is going to be on the top, and you may be having multiple sub-policies under that. When you talk about information security policy, there is one information security policy which is going to talk about the objective of why do you want to have an ISMS system in our organization. And from that, you may be having password policy, network policy. So for every process, you may be having a sub-policy, which are going to be extensions of these policy that we have on the top. So in the same way, for our PIMS also, you will be having a policy that is to be defined, and then that should be appropriate to the purpose of the organization. This is what I wanted to say. That's why I started with the vision. So if you visualize that vision, from the vision, it goes straight. And then the way that we are going to define our policy should be in sync with the purpose of the organization. The purpose is to meet the vision of the organization. That is where it is there. And then at the second level, you will be having this policy to be working as a framework so that you can have multiple objectives derived from that. So policy is going to be sort of a thing which is going to get the vision from the organization and then pass it on as an objective to the next level. So if you see that the threads are coming from the vision and it goes down till the employee level, and when you are going to evaluate at the employee level, all these things are going to get, you are going to roll it up, and then you are going to, at the end, it goes up to the vision. And that is why it should be in sync. Any policy that you are going to have, which is not in sync with the vision, first thing is you will not get support from the management. If you are going to have a policy which is not going to be in sync with that one, you are not going to get the support from the management to get this implemented. Then if every policy is going to be working on different direction, then the vision is not going to be achieved. So that is why you need to have that orientation happen. Vision, every activity that we do, it should be turned towards the vision. You can also refer to the similar thing when we talk about one of the principles of QMS is customer focus. Now it says that customer focus should be there at every process that you define. So that is orientation should be there. Anything that you do, anything that change that I'm bringing as part of my quality management system, that has to have somewhere or indirectly or directly, it should have some effect on the customer focus. The same thing. So the ultimate thing what we want to have by having a policy is to meet the objective that we have. The objective should meet the policy, and policy should be in sync with the vision, so that ultimately the vision has to be successful. So that is what we are looking for. That's how these things are threats are given here. Then there are going to be commitments from the management. Why? So they said that that is also nicely given as part of this, because when you talk about this implementing ISO standard, PIMS, the owner for that one is always going to be the management. So it is not the employee, or neither it is going to be the PIMS manager or lead for that. The responsibility can be anybody, but the accountability and the ownership is always going to be at that one. So this is how it is going to be there. Here, when we talk about this, the commitments that are coming from them. So the commitment should satisfy the applicable privacy safeguarding requirements, and also commitment to continual improvement. That is why I was talking about this in this one. When you go back to our previous one, improvement is there. Continual improvement is part of that. So when you have a continual improvement, it says that when you look at that on the outside, it says it is not extended. But actually, when you are going for this 27701, you will be looking for continual improvement in privacy management system also. In that perspective also, we'll be looking. So this is going to be all these things, though they are not mentioned, because explicit extensions are given by calling these things, because the extensions are given documented as part of this 27701. But those that are actually said, it is mentioned here, it is as it is, you will have to use that. There also, that's going to be entirely different. The improvement, what you are talking about 27001, or improvement in terms of ISMS, is something different from improvement that you are thinking with respect to PIMS. Those two are entirely different, and both are required, because you want to have compliance, you want to comply to 27001 and 27701 together. That is what is given here. Commitment to satisfy applicable privacy safeguarding requirements, and commitment to continual improvement, and communicated. So you have a policy that has to be communicated, then only people will be responding to that, and they will be contributing towards the PIMS, and it should also be available to interested parties. The last two are how we are going to spread that information to every level between the employees and other stakeholders, so that they will be contributing towards improvement of PIMS. Whereas the third and fourth are commitment that we get from the top management. The first and two are clearly talking about how the way that we are going to work on PIMS, the way that we are going to achieve things in PIMS is going to help us in meeting the company's vision. Okay. Now we are coming to specific stakeholders here for PIMS. Primarily, these are the three things. We see the 2 or 3 things that are there, 4 stakeholders. You can see the definition given here. But whenever we talk about PMS, these are specific to PIMS. But we said that it is going to be, you need to have this ISMS also part of that. So for ISMS, you would have already defined certain other stakeholders here as part of that. And again, you remember this is a role. It is not necessary that the PIMS, suppose you have a lead, PIMS lead, that same person can play the other role also, ISMS role also. It's only a lead. It's only a role. So the same role can be played by the same person. Both roles can be played by the same person. So you have PII principle. This is very specific here. Personal identifiable information specific to that. So these are the principle, the people whose information is with us. These are the individuals. That is what I said when we talk about data subject. Data subject is the terminology that is used for the individual in GDPR. In this 27701, principle is the terminology that is used for the individual. When you talk PDPA, it is using data. So everywhere the terminology is going to be different, but what they mean is the individual whose data is going to be with the organization. So here, these are the people whose data is going to be there, and they have certain rights. And that is what we are going to, the data is what we are going to make use of that. Now, the other one, what we have is a processor. In fact, just for minimizing the slides I have done, actually, it should have been the second one should be the controller. You have a controller who is going to design the process, who is going to define the process, and he is the one who is going to control everything. So when you have this is a controller, any process that is going to be there as part of PII. So when you talk about process, it can be anything. It can be executing the rights that are coming from any principle, or whenever there is a process that is defined, any legitimate purposes you are running a process, then that has to be controlled by this controller. There is always going to be one controller. There can be multiple controllers also. That's also possible in a bigger organization. But when we talk about one process, there is always one owner. That is how we do in ISMS also. If you think that every asset that we have, information asset, there is going to be a owner for that. So you are going for that, the asset or the process, there should be a owner. So it should be a unique owner so that there will not be confusion there. So when something goes wrong with that one, then something has to be addressed as part of this asset or that part of the process, there should be one role who will be playing that one. So similar way, you're also going to have a controller here. And for every process, he is the one who is going to control. Controller is going to define what should be done, what data to be used, how it has to be done. So everything is going to give that one. And the second role, what we have is a processor role. Processor is the one who is going to do what controller is asking for. Sometimes in a smaller companies, you may be having the same person who will be playing the controller role and the processor role, but there are roles should be there. Or sometimes you may be outsourcing also. It depends on what is the volume of the data that you are going to use, what sort of analysis that you want to use. For simple thing like when you want to do that, when you are going to conduct a survey, so consider that you have a big retail chain that you have. That retail chain is going to conduct a survey. Now that survey, normally they will outsource that. So the outsourced company, they will be doing that. They are the one who are going to process that. So they are going to meet the people who are going to come in their chain, wherever outlet is there. They are going to talk to the customers and get the input. They are going to collect it. That information is going to be gathered, and then they do that analysis, whatever is there, and the input is going to come back to the controller. But every activity that is going to be there is going to be defined by the controller, and he is the one who is going to say what is to be done and how is to be done, and whether the purpose for which it is done, whether it is a legitimate purpose or not. Everything is going to be defined by the controller. So you have controller and the processor, and these two are going to be working with the data of the principles that we have. Apart from that, we will be having certain third parties from whom we will be, of course, for some reasons, we will have to collate with them and get the things done. Primarily, these are the three things that we have. You have the data object, that the principle that you have, and you also have, somebody is asking about segregation of duties. Yeah, I thought of leaving that. It is going, when we talk about segregation, it is related to, let me go back because that's a huge area, but I'm giving you an idea. When we talk about segregation, that comes under support. If you are looking for 7.2, 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3, as part of 7.2, it's talked about support. When leadership, you have roles and responsibilities. In 5.3, I think roles and responsibilities will be there. And that when you are defining the role, for every role, you will be defining two things. The responsibilities that are expected to be done by that role, and then the authority that it has. So when I'm going to have a person, or when I'm going to create a role, I'm going to tell what are the activities that are supposed to be done by that role. That is number one. Number two, what level of decisions that he can take. That is authority. Now, the segregation comes later. Why do we need segregation? Segregation is required only when there is a confusion. I have a role. That role is going to be mapped by multiple employees. I have a role, and then there are three employees mapped to that role. Then only there is a confusion, because everyone is going to have the same set of responsibilities, and who has to do what is not clear. That is where we are going to use the segregation. So segregation is going to do this part. Segregation can be using authority also sometimes. I'll give a simple example. Like in a bank we go. So we are going to present a check to the teller. If the value of that is going to be lesser than 1,000 rupees or $1,000, whatever it is, So it is going to be handled by the teller himself. He is going to pass that one. If that value is going to be more than that value, if it is going to be crossing that value, then the approval has to be done by the manager. Now, if you look at this, the responsibility is approving a check. It is same, but depending on the decision-making power authority, it is going to be done by different people. So when you want to segregate, it can be done in multiple ways. Segregation is segregating the responsibilities, but for the role, all the responsibilities are same. So segregating is one. Sometimes it is going to be based on the way that you are going to have authority on that one. By authority, you are going to do that one. Or sometimes it is going to be on other parameters. Like consider a case, you have a role called, let's say, a sales manager. Now, sales manager is a common role that you have. Now, you are working on multiple areas in the country, in all areas. So you are going to divide the entire area into 4, north, south, east, and west. Now, for every region, you are going to have one sales manager. Now, segregation there is going to be dependent on the parameter of location. So segregation is always going to be not, sometimes it will be splitting the responsibility also. Sometimes the same responsibility is going to be drilled down to every person who is going to be mapped to that role, but it is going to be applicable on a specific function. It is going to be based on the decision power, or it can be some other factor that is going to be there. So that is how we are going to do that. That is a 5.3 that you have as part of that. Now, when you come back to this, okay, now we talk about controller. We were talking about the case like sometimes controller and processor may be same. In smaller companies, that is how it is. You are going to do it. So something like a single man post office or a single man bank. So if it is going to be one person in the bank, he is going to do everything. He is going to be a manager. He is going to be the person teller. He is going to play the every role. So that in that case, the similar case what we have. And sometimes it will happen, you will be working as a controller for one process, but for other process, you will be working as a processor. It is also possible. Normally, that is how it is an internal customer, what we talk about. You see that in the government departments, controllers are going to be there at every department level. So when the activity is going to be specific to that department, they are the controllers. When they are going to do certain activities which are expected by other department, they will be the processors. So it depends on the process. That's why I said whenever we talk about this controller, it is always going to be based on the process. So if you have, ideally, it is going to be a single control. There is going to be one person who is going to be heading all the controls. So that control, in fact, it's going to be manageable easier. But there are cases where you will be having multiple controllers. There are cases where there is a swap that will happen between processor and controller. But any point of time for one process, there is always going to be one controller and one processor. So in that case, controller is the one who is going to define what is the process, what data has to be used, and how it, all the thing it has to be, the process itself is going to be defined, where, how the data has to be done, how we will have to delete the data, everything is going to be defined by the controller. And it is a responsibility of the processor to do just what controller is asking for. And sometimes it is outsourced. Normally, this is a model that we have, a process model that we have when you are going to do outsourcing, when European companies are going to outsource their activities, financial transaction activities to Asian countries. Now, the controller is always going to be sitting at there at Europe, and then the processors are going to be at Asian countries. So they will be doing what the controller is asking them to do, so that controller at the end is going to get what he wants. That is the way that the responsibilities are going to be. Actually, the responsibilities are entirely different, but still, how we are going to play with that, that's going to be that. That's how it is there. Okay. Stakeholders, who are the stakeholders that we have seen? Then we talk about the responsibilities here. So the controller, be independent and report directly to the appropriate management level of organization. So they are the person who are going to who are going to take decisions, who are going to be solely responsible. They are the owners of the entire thing that we have. PDPA also data principle. Okay, so these the guy or the controller is always going to be the person who will be the contact point for any supervisory authority. So you will be having multiple roles. What we talk about here is implementing PMS in our organization. So whenever we talk about privacy management system, it is always this is going to be more of a thing which is driven by government. So there are always certain roles from the government side, and all these people who are going to be there, any controller who is going to be there at part of every organization, they will be answerable to the government agencies that are going to be there. So there are going to be either it is going to be supervisory authority. Some in GDPR we call that as a supervisory authority. In some cases it is different. So so it depends on where it is. But again, they are going to represent the government, and they are going to represent the entire country. And these people are going to represent every organization, and they are going to be owners of this whole PIMS as part of the organization. Okay, now we talk about consent and choice. Now, what is that? Now we are slowly into that one. So there are some things we'll see. We are not going to see the entire 27701 here, but some of the ideas that we are going to browse through. Now the consent and choice, what we talk about, this is actually related to the principal, the consent that is given by the principal and the choice he has. Now there are a lot of things that are there, what he can do as what he or she can do, whether or not to allow the processing of their PIA. So they have a choice. If I do not want mailers should be sent, that itself is a thing. Like when I'm going to get continuously mail, that itself is going to be one thing which is related to privacy. So if I'm going to opt it out, there is always, you can see that. That's why any mail that is coming, the alert mails that are coming, at the end, you can see if you want to unsubscribe, you can click that, it will take you there, you can unsubscribe that. So that is an option by which you can take that right back. So you are going to give the right to them, and then they are going to make use of that. That's a process. Process is sending you one mailer promoting their product or promoting service or whatever it is. And they are sending it based on your consent that you have given earlier. And there is always a way by which you should be in a position to get out from that, remove that one. And that should be part of that. It should be easy to be used so that you can opt that out. That is, you can unsubscribe that so that you will not get mails from them continuously. That's how it is there. So first thing is what type of consent that we can give, whether or not to allow the processing of the PI, that is possible. Opt-in consent for PI principal for collecting or otherwise processing sensitive PII. So what is that you can take? You can say that you can take only this information, other thing that will not do. Now you can see that where we are being asked. Now when I'm going to visit some portal, some online portal, who is asking me? Everybody is going to ask you. Even the simple thing when you are visiting a site, they ask us. We want to have cookies installed in your machine. That is the consent that you are going to. When you say yes, they will be taken that as a consent, and then they will be having cookies. So cookies are same thing. What that is going to work for them. So that based on the cookies, they are going to promote their sales or promote their product. So that is the option by which you are giving your consent. There are different ways of doing that. It depends on what I'm giving is only on online thing, how you are going to give that one. Sometimes it will say that you are visiting an exhibition. And then when you are going there, along with the ticket, you can see half of that is going to be some coupon. And coupon says you give me your mail ID. What to do with their mail ID for them? Nothing. So they are going to make use of that somewhere. So when it is there, they are going to, so telephone numbers, all these things are going to be used somewhere. And then by giving your number there, you are giving a consent to them, and then so that they can make use of that. So that's the thing what we have, and the right of individual participation and access principle. Then one thing that it is there, that is what is expected from the organization is any process that they do before obtaining the consent, the organization should say for what purpose they were picking this data. So that is what is openness, transparency, and notice principle, what we talk about. So why do they want to capture my data? Why do you want to have a cookies in my laptop? So they will say that this is the reason. And if you agree on that, you are going to give a consent. If not, you are going to stop that. And notice is also going to be there. So what type of, whenever there is a principle, you are going to get the notice. Whenever there is a process that is there, you are going to get a notice. That is also going to be based on our consent. So everything, when you are going to start with that initiation itself is going to be based on our consent. Continuation is also going to be there, and always you should be having a way by which you will be in a position to stop it. That should also be there as part of the system. So when you say that you are using their information, there should be a way easily the principal itself should be in a position to stop it if he is not interested in. That should be part of that. That's what we talk about consent and choice. When you have multiple things, you have a choice. Yeah, this is the thing. When you talk about cookies, reject all, allow, use necessary. So that is the thing. That is, you have a choice. When you say reject all, you are not giving any consent. When you say that you are rejecting, but you are not rejecting everything, then you have a choice in that. So that is how we are going to, depending on what is that, what information that they want to track, what information that they want to take, based on that, they will be doing that one. That's how this consent and choice is used by mostly the terminologies that is used here are applicable directly to online applications, but the same thing can be done for other ways also, other means also. As I said, when you go to exhibition, when you are buying a ticket, normally you say that at the backside you'll see the coupon. They will say that if you are going to fill this, you are going to lottery is there, you will be getting a prize. So that is the thing. That is so but you will have to give your mail ID. So that is the thing. So knowingly you are going to give your mail ID, and that mail ID they are going to make use for some promotion activities. Okay. Now we talk about the legitimacy. What is the meaning of purpose? When we say a purpose, you are doing a process, and for every process there is going to be a purpose. So when I'm going to collect my mail ID, that is a process. Collection of mail ID is my process. Now, what is the purpose for that? Purpose should be legitimate, which means the one thing is that is already known. So adhering to the purpose, legitimacy, and specification means ensuring that the purpose complies to applicable law. So the mail ID that I'm going to collect from various customers, various visitors to the site, I'm going to use it only for lawful activity. I'm not going to use something against that. And also you are going to communicate the purpose to the principal. That is also important. So one thing is the information that I'm going to, as an organization, if I'm going to collect some information, that information I'm going to use only for lawful activities. The other one is I'm also going to let the principal know, data principal know that this is the purpose for which I'm collecting it. And then the language that I'm going to use should be easy to read. It should not be something like a document, like a judicial document where it will take half an hour to read for us and get a meaning of that. But most of that is a length. We don't even check that. Always it says that check that. Checkbox, you'll have to check only, then you'll go for OK button will be enabled. But most of us, 99% of us, we don't read that one. We just check that box and then go to the next one. That is what is the clarity, what we talk about. You'll have to read that and understand what we agree. So by way agree, like even when you are making a transaction in your bank account, online transaction, when you are doing it, when you have selected all the payee and everything, at the end, it is going to ask something. You'll have to check that one. Are you accepting this? And there is a hyperlink there. But so far, I never seen that hyperlink. Same thing we do, that we need to see that and what is the thing that we are accepting there. And that is what is acceptance that we give for that particular. The acceptance is on your own thing. You are initiating this transaction. If something goes wrong, you are only responsible. That is the thing that is going to be there. Or anything that we are agreeing on that. By clicking on that, we are agreeing on that. That's the thing that we have. If applicable, given sufficient explanation for the need for process sensitive PIA. If you are going to touch some sensitive PIA is something subsection of our PIA. PIA is personally identifiable information. There are certain things which are going to be very sensitive. My hospital information, what type of treatment I am having. So these things are going to be very sensitive. So those things you need to take care that whenever you are going to do some process with that one. Otherwise, you will be, as an organization, we are going to run into a problem if you are not getting consent for the right consent for that one. So this is what we call as a legitimate purpose. So when the purpose is going to be legal, and then you should have already communicated the purpose to the principal, and then whatever the language that you use there, that should be clarity should be there. Then we say that purpose is going to be legitimate. And sensitive PIA, what we talk about, there are multiple things that you can have whenever we talk about sensitive PIA, like what is my political party? I don't have to tell anyone. That's a sensitive one. I do not want to tell to everyone. Or maybe if you are asking me what is my religion or what is my caste, I'm not interested saying that one. Whereas if you ask me what is my pet animal, that may not even consider as a PIA. So that is the thing what we are talking about here when we talk about this sensitive PII. So it should be always considered as a severe thing than the normal PII also. Okay. Now the other concept what we have is the OTP, CVV and all is a way that you are going to confirm that you are the one who are initiating that particular transaction. So when you are typing your OTP, that means that the two-way check that is there, they are also confirming that they are dealing with that account only on the basis of your consent, and you are also having that confirmation that it is actually a genuine transaction, and you are confirming it by using that OTP. So that is how we are going to have two-way confirmation. Nowadays, it is all, you have two-way confirmation that is happening. Even for logging in, that has come now. When you want to log into Gmail, you have OTP that is given. So through phone, you will have to, not the OTP, now a different system is there. So that number you will have to type in, or you will have to click on there in the mobile, then only the laptop, you will be getting that in the browser. So that sort of double checks are coming to ensure that the person who is going to see that information is the right person or not. So that is a data security, what we talk about. Okay, now the pseudonymous data, what we talk about. See, the data sometimes is going to be used for multiple purposes. So when you are using this purpose for a thing where you do not need name, in such cases, it is good not to use the name. Suppose I'm doing a research. So as a statistician, I'm doing a research. I want to see like how many of, like I'm doing a research for automobile thing. I want to see that how many are buying all sedan cars. So I'm going to have this information collected from car dealers. All the car dealers, I'm going to ask them, give me the information, whoever has bought sedan car, a white color. So my thing is, I want to show that what is the share of white cars in sedan with respect to total number. So that is the research I'm doing. In that case, when you are going to ask that information you are going to get. But in that case, you don't need who has bought that. We are interested only in the number. So in such cases, when the data is going to be sent, then the name should be removed. So you are going to give a false name so that easily you will not be in a position to get that name. There are two things that are going to be there. One is the pseudonym. So you are going to change the name. You are going to use some other name. The other one is anonymization. There you are entirely removing the name. Pseudonym is sometimes when you are going to give it for processing, you are going to use some other name. You are going to replace that name, and then you are going to send the data to the processor. Processor is going to run the process, and he is going to give back the processed data to us. Now we are going to reverse that so that he will know without, you are not letting the processor know whose data it is, but you are getting it done. That is where the pseudonyms are going to be used. In some cases, you do not even want that one. You want everything should be in the anonymous. You are going to remove that totally so that you cannot come back. You cannot link it back. So both are going to be same. One is you are replacing by something else. The other one is entirely removing that so that you will never know whose data it is. So that's a main thing. That is when you go for research at the thing, like when I want to know, like all the COVID patients, what sort of temperature they had the last 3 days who have died. So if that information I'm looking for, I'm not interested in the names of the patients. I'm interested only in the number and that information, what information is that. So in such cases, you don't need this name. So that becomes anonymization. In some cases, I want to process it, but when I want to interpret it, I need the names. In that case, for processing, I will be changing the name, replacing with some other string, and then sending to him and get it processed. And when it has come back, I'm going to replace it and then get the thing done. That is where the pseudonyms are used. So both things are used depending on where you want to, how do you want to use that one. The safest one is anonymization, but sometimes you need to have it so that your process is going to talk to each of them, contacting each of them. In that case, you need to replace it back to original principal name. The third thing what we come across here is metadata. Ideally, the way that we call this metadata is, metadata is always going to be something where we talk about data of data. So something like, if you're a little bit familiar with the database concept of it, we talk about every column or field. So when you have column or field, it has certain attributes. It says that this particular column will be holding only numeric value. And there is a validation when it is going to be the value should be less than 100. So you are going to set some information related to metadata. Metadata is going to hold that information as part of that. So that is normally you can see that if your people are used to XML, you know about this metadata. So as part of the data, there is going to be some more thing that is added that gives a context to that particular data that is going to be there. So that metadata is also going to be important because metadata has certain information through which you will be in a position to find whose data it is. Ultimately, what we are trying to do is, why do you want to go for this, especially when this is pseudonym or this anonymization? We want to avoid the risk of unknown people getting the name and they can see what they have done. So that we want to avoid. That's why we are going to remove the name totally, or sometimes we are going to replace that and then use that one. The same way, when it is going to be metadata is going to be available, sometimes we will overlook that. We see that through metadata, you cannot find anything. But sometimes metadata will lead you to find when you have a data, which may be anonymous here. But if you have a metadata related to that, you will be in a position to identify whose data it is. So that is where metadata is also going to be equally important. You see that in that way, you will have to ensure that these things are going to be, these should not lead to the person you are looking for. Okay. Now we are coming to specific objectives and the controls. This is specific to 27701. So if you remember, we were seeing certain controls. Go back to that one for a moment and then come back. So here you have seen that the way 27,000 structured is this way. There are 18 classes. There are 18 classes. For every class, there is an objective. Now for every class under that, there are going to be certain controls. So same concept is used for 27701. When you come here, it talks about two annexes. It has two annexes, Annex A and Annex B. Annex A is going to talk about the controls that are specific to the controllers, and Annex B talks about the controls that are specific to processes. Now, what is that? What is that in that? There are four control objectives that are there. In this also, there are four. Out of that, 3 are common between them and one is different. You're going to see that also. Now, there is always going to be certain objective, and there is a control objective. To meet this objective, there are going to be multiple controls. Control is a control measure that you want to bring in. So that is what we are going to do. So the controls are going to be different for controller and processor. Now, control is a control measure what we want. So the objective is going to see what type of risks that are there, how we are going to mitigate, and what type of control measure you want to have. That is what is going to be the second level. So that is what is here as part of that. If you can see that one, this has 4 and this has 4. Whereas the second, third, and fourth are same. Whereas the first one here, it talks about objectives and control, and this one conditions for collection and processing. So these are the 4 objectives for processes, and these are the 4 objectives for the controllers. That is how it is there, and this is part of 27701, Annexure A, Annexure B. Now, what is there in that? That is what we are going to see here. Now, in this one, if you look at this one, you have the objective here. This is objective. So under this objective, these are the controls that are there. Now this name will little bit confused. So you read this one, then get the meaning and then apply this one. So this is objective. Condition for collection and processing. This is the objective. We want to do this one. And to make this possible, you have control measures. These are the control measures that are there. I want to have a condition for collection and processing. So I need to have a control on how I am going to have agreement with the customer, how I am going to define my organization purposes, how I am going to use my advertising and marketing. So infringing instruction, how I am going to define that. Customer obligations, how I am going to define that. Records related to process, how I am going to deal with them, how I am going to address them. So each one, it is a control. I'm going to define that specific to my job that I'm doing in my organization. Now, all these are having the same objective on, these are the conditions, right? For collecting and processing. So this is going to be applicable only for processes. Whereas there are certain things which are going to be applicable for controller also. So you have 2 columns here. And the first column is going to talk about the objective. And for controllers, what are the controls that are applicable? for processes, what are the controls that are applicable? This one under this, so these are the people who are going to define the objective. So that is why it is not applicable to processor. Controller is the one who is going to define everything. So he's going to define the collection, how it has to be done. He's going to define how to identify the purpose. He's going to define how to define whether it is lawful basis or not, that he is going to do everything here. Conducting impact assessment, contract with PIE processor, if it is going to be joint controller. So each of these controls are going to be defined and executed only by controllers, which are all under the same objective. Now, the definition of this process is not going to be a job of processor. That's why nothing is applicable here. Whereas if you come to this one, condition for collection and processing, which is what is here, you can see that one, which is what is one of the things that is given here, the condition for collection and processing. So it is defined here, and that is what is the objective that is defined, and execution is going to be done by processors. So there are different type of controls that are going to be there related to this particular objective. Now, the other two, what we have here, the other three, what we have here is common. So obligations for obligation to PI principle. So both are obligated to do what principle is asking for. So most of the thing is going to be with the controller, and the things that are going to be there with the controller, because they are the one who will be doing on behalf of the controller, the processing or whatever it is. And these people are going to define various things, because we said every principle have the eight rights are there. So those rights are going to be applicable, and then it is the responsibility of the controller to provide a way by which they can exercise those rights. So those things are, you are going to determine and fulfill the obligations, determining the information, providing information to principal, providing mechanism to modify or withdraw consent. These are the rights that they have. Providing mechanism to object processing. So for everything, this is going to be a way by a method. The principals are going to make use of that, and then they are going to either give a request or they will be in a position to exercise their rights. So this is a responsibility of the controller to have controls to this one. Whereas on the principal side, it is always going to be, they will be doing on behalf of the controller. On the processor side, again, they will be fulfilling the obligations of the principal. Okay, then we have two more here. The objective, privacy by design and privacy by default. We will be discussing this more. If you are already familiar with that, then you should be getting the meaning of that. If not, we are going to discuss more on this architecture tomorrow. Now, what we talk about here is when we are designing a policy, or when we are designing an application, software application through which you are making the activities to do, these activities to do. This is the thing that we have seen there. Sorry. These activities to do. In that case, how we are going to do that one. That is where you are going to see here. So there are certain things that are going to be inbuilt as part of the design. There are certain things it is going to be based on default value. Now, I'll give some scenarios where you can easily interpret this. One is when you talk about privacy by design, thing is like you are trying to make a transaction in your bank portal. And every time when you are going to transfer some amount, it asks, you will have to click that. You will have to check that one. That is a consent. So it is asking us, and that is by design, it is forcing you to give your consent. That is what is privacy by design. So it says, unless you are consenting it, it cannot be done. So that is going to be part of the design of the process or part of the design of the application itself. That is what is privacy by design. Then when you talk about privacy by default, it does not take, when the checkbox is there, the default value of the checkbox is not checked. It is unchecked. Because when there is going to be some entry or some value that it is expected from the principal, then the value which it can hold, right? That value, the default value of that should be of lesser risk or no risk. That is what we are looking for. So if I'm going to give a checkbox stating that you will have to give a consent by clicking this, and I'm going to have the checkbox checked already, then this fails, privacy by default fails. So even if I'm not noticing what is the command there, if I'm going to click that without my knowledge, I'm giving a consent. That should not be there. So by design, it is there. By default, you made that in such a way that it is always checked. That shouldn't be it. So whatever is the default value that is going to be there, that value should always be the least risk one or no risk. That is what we are going to. It is going to be the way that we are going to interpret this may be different. The way the application is going to be built, application or whichever the process is going to be there, because this both are going to be applicable for the process. And when we say the process is going to be executed using the application. So ultimately, when you are going to design an application, in the design itself, you are going to inbuild that so that the privacy thing is taken care of there. And something like that, when I'm going to, as an employee, when I'm going to browse employee management system software, I should not be in a position to view information of other employees. That is a privacy by design. As an individual employee, I can view only my information. And I also expect that my information should not be viewed by anybody else. That is a privacy by design, what we talk about. The information should not be there. And privacy by default is one thing, that the value that I'm going to pick, which should be the risk less or lesser risk. That is what we're going to do. So to get that control, you'll have multiple things that are there. So you are going to limit the collection. What is the meaning of the limiting the collection? So when I'm going to run the process, I'm always going to see whether I need the entire data. So something like this, like I'm running a jewelry shop. So every person who is buying jewelry from my company, they are going to give their feedback. Now the feedback is going to be all I collected the feedback along with the phone number and other things. Now I'm going to see that whoever has bought pearl from my side, from my company, and for them I'm going to send a separate alert, separate message. Now, when I'm going to, if that is my process that I'm going to do, for that, when I'm going to pick the data, I'll have to pick only that information, only those people who are eligible for that. So I'm going to apply that so that I'll ensure that it is going to bring me limited number. So when I say that, when I'm fetching the data from the database, I should be in a position to fetch only the data that is relevant for the process which I'm going to do. So if I say that one, it is going to be of two levels. One, I'm going to pick only of those clients for whom this is going to be applicable. So if you are visualizing in the table concept, I'm going to filter only those rows which I want. Row wise, I'm going to apply one filter. The other thing, there may be multiple attributes that I would have captured for every client. But for this particular process, I need only 3 attributes. I'm interested only in mail ID and whether he has already purchased something on Pearl. So this is the information that I need. In that case, when I'm going to fetch that information, I'm going to fetch only those 2 attributes. I may be having 20 attributes, but I'm going to fetch only 2 attributes, which means I'm going to apply filter on the columns that I'm going to send. If you're already a little bit familiar with the way that tables are there, or Excel sheet, you visualize that when you have huge data as part of the Excel sheet, multiple columns and multiple rows, you will be filtering it. When you are filtering it, filtering is always going to be on the columns. Rows you are going to filter because you are going to apply filter there, and it is going to squeeze and it is going to show based on the filter. There is a way that you can filter on the columns also. So in both filters you are going to apply, and that is what is going to be the limited collection what we talk about. So that's the first thing. That means this data that I'm going to use, I'm going to send it to a processor, and he is going to run that one and then get the information done, or sometimes he's going to do the process. So to him, I need to send only that which is required for that process. That is why the limit collection. Or when I'm collecting itself, I'm going to collect only that information that I require. I should not ask for something which is not relevant. The other thing is, for processing, I will be processing only that is required, bare minimal, that thing that is there. And whatever I do, accuracy and quality that is expected. Then PII minimization objectives, the de-identification and deletion at the end. This is also something similar to a pseudonym. You are de-identifying it and then do the process, and then you will be deleting at the end. It's more of a temporary data, what we talk about. And then sometimes you are going to retain for a longer period. Sometimes once the retention period is over, you will be disposing that out. Now, retention is always going to be, disposal is going to happen on 2 occasions. One, if the data principal says, my data you can delete, I don't want to be part of your data. So consent is removed. So you'll have to delete that. You agree that you are going to dispose all that thing. And retention is always going to be how long you are going to retain that. For every data, it's going to have some meaning. It's not going to be meaning. It's going to lose its meaning after some time. The clicks that I'm making today in the Amazon thing has meaning as only for 3-4 months. After that, all the products are different. So whatever clicks that I made, whatever product that I have selected has no meaning at all. So after 3 months, it is losing its importance. In that case, the retention period, I'm going to say at 6 months or 8 months, and then I'm going to remove that. That is the thing that is going to be controlled. That is one of the control that you are going to bring. And the transmission controls, when I'm going to send it, share it to somebody else, how I'm going to do that one. That is what is the thing that we have. So in that case, how I'm going to do that one. Yeah, the concept here of controller and processor is there in every PIMS system. You see that in what is given here as part of ISO PIMS. The same thing is available in GDPR. The same thing is going to be available in PDPA. Same thing is SCC everywhere. Wherever you have this privacy management system, the concept is same. You will have a controller and you will have a processor. You are going to do the similar thing that you are going to do. Same thing is that it's not something new what we talk about, but specific to local government thing. The things are last may little bit, there may be little bit change in that one. So second part here is, and you can see it is restricted. Temporary files are given here. They will be using temporary files, return, transfer, or disposal of PIA transmission control. So when they are going to transmit back, whatever control they will have to use. When they say a control is, whenever you are sending, you'll have to encrypt it, or you'll have to zip it with the password. So that is the control that is decided by the controller here, and processor has to follow that one. Now the next one objective what we have is sharing, transfer, and disclosure. So related to that, there are certain set of controls for controller as well as for processor. So in this case, identify based on that. Again, it is going to be how we are going to control this one. So when I'm going to share it, when I'm going to transfer it, or when I'm going to disclose it to somebody. So what is the thing that I'm going to do that one? So identify the basis for transfer between. So you just say that just without reason, we should not process. That is also there. Without purpose, without legal purpose, even the controller should not initiate any process. When he is going to initiate a process, there should be a legitimate request. Either the process should be initiated by someone or initiated by the data principal, or there should be a request from the government side. Otherwise, we should not do that. Or sometimes it may be like a routine job. You are doing a backup. For backup, you are going to copy that. Those things are part of our process. Other than that, you cannot do that one. I just want to have the second backup of that. I just want to have a thing so that tomorrow I know that they are going to ask this. So I'm doing it today itself. I'm then keeping it ready. So when they ask, I'm going to give that one. Those things are not going to be applicable for controller. Whenever it is going to be approved, then only you are going to make use of that. That's why it is there. Identify the basis. Even if you are going to transfer it, what is the need for that? Is it possible without transferring? That's how we need to look for that. And then which PIA can be transferred, records of PIA disclosure, third parties, all these things are going to be controls that are used for sharing, transfer, and disclosure. Now, again, sharing itself is barred. When the process is like GDPR, you cannot share the data or you cannot transfer the data outside Europe. And same with the case of PDPA also. If you cannot transfer the data outside India. So that is why when we are outsourcing, when we are doing outsourcing job for any of the, from India or Asian countries, when they do for any of the European countries, you will connect yourself to remote machine and then you will do it. You will never have the data. And that is what is mentioned clearly as part of GDPR, that the data should not be moved out from Europe unless it is approved by the higher authorities. That too for specific case. So just for processing, you cannot move that one. So that is what we are talking about. So whenever there should be a basis for that, and then you need to be clear, like what are the records that you are trying to transfer. And the same thing for processes also. You need to see that same thing. You cannot, when you are going to, again, outsource to the next level, you cannot do that without getting the consent from the controller. So these are the controls that are going to be related to sharing, transfer, and control. So the way that is defined here is you have two sets of objectives that are there. You have two sets of objectives, one for the controllers and one set for the processes. And there are four objectives here, 4 for them. And out of this, the 3 are common and the other 2 are specific to one. And under each objective, you have multiple controls which are going to be applicable for controllers and processes differently. And for that, it is always going to be that they are going to have some process written for that one. This is a generic one. And you are going to say that when I say that this is obtain and record consent, now I'm going to see that when I'm going to define my process, depending on what type of mode I'm going to use, I'm going to define and I'm going to decide how I'm going to get that one. So when I'm going to obtain record to consent, so how to get the consent? So sometimes it can be, I can get it by post courier. I can send a form, get it filled manually, and then I can have that as a record. Or sometimes I'm going to extend a web portal so that I can ask the data principal to make entries there. That is also one way of doing. When I'm going to use the data portal, I'll have to ensure whether that is the same person or not. So authentication should be there. We will be having a user ID which is already there, or it should be based on the number. So that is how you are going to define your process here, and you will have control for checking each of them. That's what is going to be talked about control. And now we'll look at this one. The way that it's extended is already when you go for implementing 27001, you have this 114 controls. This is already you have implemented all of that. In some cases, you may not have only got cryptography, you may not have done, or 1 or 2 there. If you are not a software development company, then probably this thing will not be there. So most of the thing will be having at least 110 controls. You will be already implemented this. Over and above, you are also going to implement these controls for 27701. Each of that is going to be there. For each of that, you will be having the process written. There are going to be certain template that is used, the way that you are going to control that, and the way that you will be reviewing that and getting process is going to be there for every control measure that you are going to bring in, right? Now, the privacy principle, this is also part of 27701, because as part of the Annex C, it has a reference to another standard, 29100. 2900. So this talks about the privacy principles. So what are the principles that are there? You remember that I was talking about some half an hour back when we are going for implementing 9001. 9001 QMS has 7 principles. In the same way, privacy also has certain principles. These are the 11 principles that are there for privacy information management system. So in this one, what is principle actually? The core thing that we are expecting as part of this, when I want to have this management system implemented, then these are the things which I will be focusing on. So I need to focus on consent and choice, purpose, legitimate, the thing that we have already seen, collection, limitation, data minimization, use, retention, disclosure. All these things should be part of that. Each one is going to be a principle, and each of this should be applied in every process that I'm going to define. So when I'm going to define a process, I'm going to say whether I need a consent or choice from that principle or not, whether it is legitimate or not, whether the data and whether I'm limiting the collection or not. If for this process, if I want only 5 attributes, why should I collect 50 attributes? So minimize whether I'm using only the data that is required or not. More than that, I should not get. You should not collect more data. That is a data minimization. How long I'm going to retain it, when I'm going to disclose it. Accuracy and quality, what level of accuracy and quality required for the data that I have, and the openness, transparency, and notice for the data that I have. So for every process, I'm going to see all these 11 principles and then see whether I have addressed that or not. So this is the thing. That is what we talk about principle. Like QMS, we do the same thing we do here. So in this case, all these 11 principles are going to be addressed in every process that we are going to define as part of our privacy information management system. Then should any process that you do, you'll have to question this. You'll have to question each of that and then see whether we have addressed it. So whether accountability is there or not. That's why I said every process, there is going to be a person who is going to be accountable. There should not be even a single process without person made as a owner for that. Same thing with ISMS also. You cannot find or you should not have any information asset without having a owner defined. That is the thing. Ownership is always going to be important. That is what we talk about accountability. Who is going to do what? That is accountability, what we talk about. There is a difference between accountability and responsibility. Accountability is the owner. responsibility, the person will be doing task related to that one. He may not be accountable for that, but they will be doing that. Something like a manager. Manager is always going to be accountable for anything, whereas the subordinate is going to have some responsibility they will be doing on behalf of the manager. That's a thing here. Information security is applied. This is the basis. So this is whenever we talk about privacy, which means we inbuilt information security should be there. That's why every process you see, you will be focusing only on the privacy here on the outset, but internally security, information security should be taken care. The privacy compliance should be there. So those things are going to be there, principles that are given as part of 29,100, which are to be applied in every process that we have as part of that. Now we come to mapping of GDPR. Now this gives this is also part of that standard itself. It gives a mapping. One section, there is a annexure which gives when you want to, okay, one thing that we talk about this 27701, when GDPR came into existence, right? And when GDPR was implemented for the first time, this was only assessed. I mean, it was not certified. Like ISO, when you are implementing ISO 9001, any system that we have, when you are implementing that, ISO organization is going to assess that, and then it is also certifying that. Whereas in case of GDPR, it was not like that. So there are third-party people who will be assessing that, and then they say, based on the assessment, they used to give that result that it is in sync with what is expected as part of GDPR. That is how it is there. Now, a lot of people, they've thought that there should be sort of a certification, and then this 27701 has come, where ISO has come out with a standard for that, which is exactly similar to GDPR. And when you get certified for 27701 implemented, once it is implemented and get certified, automatically you will be getting that. It's as good as you are going to get assessed for GDPR. So that, and how it is made possible, that is where this annexure is given. In that annexure, you can see that the GDPR articles that are there, each of that article from 5 to 49, the articles that are there, these articles are linked to standard classes and controls. So you can see to and fro the things. So what is related to that, how it is. So whatever is expected as part of this 5 to 49 articles that are there, these articles are related here. And then for each of that, there is going to be one or more standard classes and controls that are there. That is how it is done. And of course, there are legal obligations will vary because there are certain local rules which are going to be applied for GDPR, which is not done specifically in ISO, because ISO always comes with a generic one. It's more of a framework, any standard when it comes. So it is not going to be specific for a country or a specific area. So when 27701 was designed, so it was taking care of all the articles that are there, and you can see the mapping so that you will be in a position to see that one. And by establishing this, you will see that you can get assessed. You are already assessed for GDPR. That is why the mapping is given. When you go for assessment for GDPR, if you have already done 27701 and you got certified for that, automatically you will be eligible for getting GDPR assessed also. That is the thing. So coexistence, that is why this has come. Okay, now we are moving to different topic. Okay, now we talk about some other standards here. We are going to see some slides on GDPR, CCPA, and PDPA, and see that how, in what way they are somewhere similar and somewhere different from each other. We're going to see that one. We'll not be spending much time on this one. Okay, GDPR, as you already know that about this, is for European Union, and it is applicable for entire Europe. Now, Britain, UK is coming out of that. They have their own GDPR for them. They are still, it is a draft that once it has become functional, then GDPR is going to be applicable only for those countries other than UK as part of Europe. So here, this organization to assume full liability for data. That is the main thing. They are the people who come out with this idea, like when you are going to have the data, when you are going to use the data of the individuals, it is the responsibility of the organization to ensure that the privacy of the data and the information, the security of the data should be maintained. That is their liability. That is that fact they have brought it as part of the GDPR one. Now, how the GDPR is structured. You have an act, General Data Protection Regulation Act, which is going to be applicable for all European countries. And then there are 99 articles, similar to what we have as part of control. There are 99 articles that are there, spread into multiple chapters and sections. So continuous running articles that are there. Of course, when chapters are depending on areas, they talk about various areas. And again, when you see that, then you may be thinking about that. In this case, only 5 to 49 are there. Whereas in this case, there are 99 articles. The reason is also there. I'll give you the reason why it is so. Because when we talk about here, when you say that ISO 27701 is synced or mapped to GDPR, then why only 49 is here? So that is also, there is a reason for that. I'll come to that one. So 99 articles total. And to understand that, there are recitals given. There's an explanation for articles. So for every article, there may be one or more recitals that is given. To understand that, it is going to give us. And all these articles are for principles. These are the 7 principles that are there for entire GDPR. The way that we have 11 principles here, see the commonality there. These are the 11 principles here. The same way, here also you have 7 principles. You are talking about the legality, transparency, fairness, purpose limitation, minimization, accuracy, storage limitation, integrity, confidentiality, accountability. You go back there, this is also going to be almost similar. Almost similar, it will be there. 1 or 2, there may be a difference, but more or less it is going to be same. Now, it works on 7 principles and 8 rights. There also we have seen the rights. Rights are going to be almost same. Name may be different here and there. So we have 99 articles, which is going to work on the basis of these 7 principles. And as a whole, the GDPR Act is going to give these 8 rights for all the data subjects. That is our idea. And when you want to know better about this article, there are recitals which you are going to make use of that. But when you want to refer, we'll be always referring 99 articles, right? So that is the thing. Let me answer to that question, why this is 49, why it is not 99. The reason for that is, in this 99, the things which are coming later, 43 and later, whatever it talks about at the higher level, from the government side, the GDPR, the representation from the government, how they should respond to that. Most of the activities that are related to that are defined there. That is why those things are not defined. Same thing with the case of PDPA also. You will be talking about, actually this 27701 is what is expected in an organization to have a right way of implementing PIMS. Now, it is not going to tell you what is expected from the government. The reason is 27701 is generic. It is not going to be specific for any country. It clearly says that if this is going to be specific, that's why it gives here. However, it is purely indicative, and it's organization responsibility to assess its legal obligations and decide how to comply with them. This is going to be different from country to country. So when we talk about this, the related articles that are there, there are only 49. So that is what is there. All the things, all the articles that are related to individual organization where they are supposed to fulfill are already taken care as part of 27701's controls and classes. That is why this mapping is done. Whereas when you go to this 99 article, there are other articles that are there, the things which have come later. They will be talking about how they are going to administer at the EU level. So those things are going to be part of that, which may not be actionable activity for organization when they want to go for GDPR implementation. That's a justification for that. So this is a structure in which GDPR is implemented. Now, the governance framework that is there, the high level one, what we see here is, you have these articles, 99 articles, which is going to be the one which will be based on which everything is going to happen. And for every organization, you are going to have a data collector and the data processor, right? So, control and the processor, it's going to be there. And there is going to be a DPO who is going to be in charge for these things. And again, this DPO need for every organization, it is not necessary to, the other way. It is not necessary that a permanent employee should be there as DPO. Sometimes it is consultant also, because the DPO job is going to be not 24-hour job. It's more of a consultant nature. So most of the companies, smaller companies, they cannot afford to have a person as a DPO there. So in such cases, consultant will be playing the role, whereas you will be having the controller and processors as part of that. And then there is going to be a supervisory authority who is going to be from the EU side. So he is the one who is going to be responsible for the entire nation. For every country, there's going to be a supervisory authority. In some countries, there are two also, I think, depending on the size of that. So this authority will be having a control. So these articles are, and data subjects are talking to the organization for their data, and they're also linked. If they need, they can directly talk to supervisory authority also. And articles are going to be controlled by supervisory authority, and these are governing the way that these processes and controls are going to function. And data subjects are always going to be dependent on this one. That is the higher level framework that we have, GDPR. A similar framework is there in other areas also. If you go for PDPA or the other cases, similar thing, only names are different. Names are going to be something different. Now, the GDPR implementation process is a rough process I try to give. We do not have time to cover a thing. You'll have to start from here. So this is a process. It goes here and then comes here and then goes here. For every activity here, there is going to be some output that you have. This is a document that you see. So establishing the project. So you are implementing. How you are going to implement GDPR. You're going to establish the project. That means you are going to give a GDPR readiness questionnaire and the project plan for this one. So the entire thing. Then you are going to develop policies. So you are going to have the policies for GDP, just with the way that we have discussed. You need to have a policy and sub-policies. And then you are also going to have a policy for data retention, the documentation, the process you are going to define. Then organize data protection. So you are going to have roles and responsibilities defined. So DPO is going to be the top role, and then other roles are going to be defined here. We will be referring to supervisory authority roles also here, because you need to coordinate with them, but supervisory authority is something different. Then you have build data inventory. So now build data, that is, you are going to build the data inventory here, which means you are going to see whose data we are holding. So you need to know the data dictionary of all the data that you have. Who is the customer, what type of data that we have, how long it should be retained, what are the rights they have given. All this information should be there as part of this database. Then data subject rights. What are the rights? So you have seen that 8 rights are there. 8 rights are going to be applicable for every type of inventory here. It is not only 8 values that you are going to hear. It's going to be multiple, because as a data subject, I might have given consent for one process, but I might not have given consent for another process. So process-wise, these things may change also. So that dictionary I'm going to have as part of this rights. And then I'm going to define how I'm going to conduct my impact assessment. We're going to see that a little bit today also. The impact assessment is going to tell you that what is the risk that we have, what type of risk that we have in our organization related to privacy. And then you are going to use a questionnaire to do that one. Then the data transfer. When you are going to do the data transfer, for that you are going to have certain agreements done. And then with the data processes, right? You are going to, whenever it is going to be transferred, transfer is going to happen to 2 places. One, to your to and fro with the processor, and sometimes it will be to the data subject. So what are the process that is related to that? Third-party compliance, it's something related to third-party. Like when you say that we have 27,001 or some compliance that you have, that agreement, what agreement that we have with the third parties when you are going to outsource. Then the personal data protection, information security policy. This is protection, data protection. This is not privacy. So here also GDPR also expecting that you have an information security system that is in place, and it does not mandate you that you should be having 27,001 or something. You don't have to name it, but you should be having enough controls to ensure that the data is protected. For that, you will be having certain policies there, and then you'll be normally the companies where they go for GDPR, they always go for 27,001, and over that they will be having GDPR. Holding data breaches, how we are going to take care of the breaches. That is when the incident happens, how we are going to deal that incident management system. So for each of this area, you are going to define a policy process, and you will be having certain documents for reference, or you will be creating a documents from that one. That's how you will be implementing that. Okay, so next, stakeholder for GDPR. So data subject is a name for the individual whose data that we have as part of our organization. Data controller, which is a common name. Data processor, who is going to process. Joint controller, same thing what we have seen as part of 27701. A representative is a legal person who will be representing a data subject. So a data subject directly he can talk to controller, or sometimes he can be represented by somebody else, by legal advisor or somebody. Then sub-processor, third party. So one processor is there, you can outsource that again to the next level. And that is what we talk about that. Supervisory authority is the one from the EU side. Okay, now CCPA, we come to the next one. So that's all we have, few slides only for that one. So we now move to the next one, CCPA. CCPA is similar to the one what we talk about. It is also of privacy data, but for California state alone. Because in US, it has started only in California first. Now almost all the other states, they started having their own privacy act. So it started in 2020, and they're also similar to GDPR. Most of the thing they is similar to what you see here as part of that. In some cases, the way that the conditions are there, that they vary. Otherwise, it is more or less, it is the same thing that is implemented there. Benefit, what benefit that you are going to get? See the way that it is given, it is benefit to the customer. In this one, it is clearly mentioned, it is going to be data subject. So it's going to be much more in here. We talk about this data subject, right? The data subject is going to be more generic one. In this case, it clearly says a customer. So what customers are going to get benefited by having CCPA implemented. So they are, first thing is they are aware of the things that are there. The company has the personal data of them. There is a way that you can opt out of the sale of their personal data. Ultimately, that is the thing. Company is holding our personal data and then they are selling it. Somewhere or the other, they are making money. Otherwise, why should they hold our data? So you can opt out, way should be there, and request of personal information similar to that, and aware of the what type of data is collected about them, when it is collected. Then if it is a minus data, it should be protected the way what we want. Third parties will gain. Know what third parties will gain access to their personal data. So when it is similar to that awareness, when you are going to use my data, and you are going to sell it to somebody, what those third parties are going to do with that one. Simple thing, like when I come to your shop and you are getting my mail ID, I give it to you. If you use, I make sense, but you are going to sell it to somebody, and then those guys are going to sell me continuously alert mails to me. That is the thing, that is what we talk about. In that case, he's made money because of that, and then I can opt out for that. Now, how and why data is collected on them. This is how whether I give or you have taken it without my consent, or why it is taken, what is the reason for that. So these are the benefits that customer will get when CCPA is going to be, because now there's an obligation from the organization side that they will have to give responses for each of the things which is going to come from the customer. That is possible only because of CCPA. Implementation process. First thing is you should get the approval from the top management, and then the accountability has to be, roles and responsibilities has to be defined clearly at every level. Then you are going to go for a gap analysis. What is there and what is not there, you are going to come out with that. Create a personal information inventory. You can see that it is actually, it is similar to this one. Here it is elaborated and it is given. And here it is just a, what do you call it, a bullet points it is given. So develop operation policy, procedure, and processes that is going to be there. Then start implementing it, and then you measure it, technical measure to secure personal information. The technical measure is how we are going to have control measures. Ensure teams are trained and competent, and monitor. So it's ongoing activity, monitor it, and periodically you'll have to audit for compliance of these things. This is the thing, the way that you are going to implement CCPA. Okay, as part of the documentation, what is bare minimal documentation that is expected? They are given the list there, but other ISO never gives something like this. It's only suggests. So in this one, you have this is a master document. You have a documentation controller spreadsheet. It has all the, this one is a controlling the rest of the documents. You have these things. Whenever there is a protection notice, it should be sent. There should be a format for that. When the consent form is sent, there should be a format for that. The DPO, job description. So job description of the DPO that should be available. Rights and choices of the consumer form that should be available. So for each of that, you are going to have Deepika again. I don't know what pleasure you get by doing this, sir. Okay, the personal information privacy assessment, how to conduct this, what is the process and what is the template that is going to be used. Then SAR, subject access request. So when the subject is going to data subject, that's a principal data subject, individual is going to request for access. What is the procedure? There should be a form or there should be a entry form in the portal so that they are going to request and then you are going to give access to that. The policy, data protection policy, which is different. It's not privacy, it is information security one. Then user data deletion request form. It's the same form, it is in a different way. Internal audit procedure, this SAR request form. This is a procedure, this is a form. Information asset for disposal. So each one is going to take care of each of the processes that we have here in the previous one, right? In this one. So what are the documents that are required for CCPA? That is what is given here. Then we have the CCPA versus GDPR, the difference, what is that? So this is going to be applicable for California, this for European thing. What do you consider as a lawful activities? So this is what is there as per CCPA. You have this right to limit the sale. Some of the things are common here. Mostly things are going to be same in either case. Individual rights. So only the time period is different. Otherwise, rights are going to be always that 8 rights what we have everywhere, because that the basic requirement what we have. Okay, now we are coming to PDPB, which is Data Protection Authority of India 1. So Personal Data Protection Bill 2019. 2 days back, you would have heard the news also that they got it back. They're working on draft again, then they should be releasing it soon. We'll see some slides on that. Again, you have different names here. Terminologies are a little bit different from what is that? This is a data fiduciary, what we talk the controller. Then obligations. What are the obligations there? That is so prohibition, limitation, requirement of notice, ensure quality, restriction, accountability. These are the principles. We have seen the 8 principles there and 11 principles as part of 27701. That is what is given here as obligation from fiduciary here. Then grounds for processing, when you want to do that one. So the reasons, process for personal data for other reasonable purposes, whenever it is going to be there. In this case, you don't have to get the consent from the individual. If it is going to be based on whistleblowing, somebody is giving some information and you want to check that one, in that case, government can make use of that. Or whenever it is going to be merger or acquisition happening, then automatically it is going to, you don't have to get the consent from them. It is going to happen by itself. When companies are going to merge and you have shares, automatically it will be done. Network and information security related one. Like when it is there, our user IDs are going to be them. They are going to change the access and other thing depending on that. So there are certain reasonable purposes for which the personal data is going to be picked. And what is the categorization of that? It is there on what grounds the processing of personal data without consent. In some cases, there are, when we are going to recover the debt, then it is going to make use of our information and see whether we have any other property, movable or immovable property, and see that how it is possible to recover the debt using that one. So those things are judiciary related one. For that reasons, when government is asking for that, it is mandatory thing that we need to respond to that one. Otherwise, for that case, you don't have to wait for the consent from the individual as such. So this we have seen already as part of the transparency and accountability. That's one thing that we have seen as part of this obligations also. This one thing is it should be transparent. Anything that we do, when you are going to do a process, when the data subject, or in this case data principal, when the data principal is going to ask what is the reason, what you do with the process, it should be transparent. That should be there, and accountability should be there for every activity that we do. So privacy by design, that's applicable here. Transparency in processing personal data, security safeguards and other things, that's part of this. So how do we do that? When our data principal is going to ask that one, then it is a obligation of, it is obligatory thing, and then the data fiduciary has to respond to the queries. Okay. Now we come to the last part of that, which is performing privacy risk assessment. Now, privacy risk assessment is so how we are going to assess when you are going for implementing any of the PIMS, right? It can be anything. It can be GDPR or PDPA or whatever it is. You name it whichever way you want. first we need to assess and see that what are the privacy related risks that we have. So that is the how to perform that, how to perform privacy risk assessment. That is what we are going to see here, some steps here. Now, first of all, when we talk about this, one thing that we have is how it has evolved. I'll spend 2-3 minutes on that when with respect to ISO. ISO, the parent standard is always QMS 9001. And from QMS, you have one concept there, the risk. And one type of risk is data information security. So that information security, one risk is taken as a separate one, and you have a standard defined for that one. That is what is 27001. Now, in that one, you are going to build on that, and that itself is a risk. Whole 27001 is a risk management one. In the same way, 27701 is also a standard that is used for managing the risk, which is of a specific type. So this is risk specific to privacy, data privacy. So the entire thing is actually a risk management activity. Now, when you talk about risk management, again, we have a different standard for that as part of ISO. The basic general thing what we have is 30,000. You have 31,010, which is a specification, and 31,000 is a standard for risk management. But there is another standard that is available specific for this IT, which is 27005. So and the concept that is there is going to be simple. Whenever you want to have risk management, there are going to be 4 stages. You have risk assessment. You will be, as part of this risk assessment, there is going to be 3 things there as part of this. You're going to have the identifying the risk evaluation, and then risk analysis and evaluation. These 3 together we call as a risk assessment. And once it is then you are going to treat the risk. And to do this, we are going to establish the context. So when I want to have a risk management, I need to set the context where it is going to be there. And based on the context, I'm going to identify my risk. So you need to set the context, and then I'll be doing risk assessment. Now, this risk assessment is going to be of 3 types, 3 subphases: identification, analysis, and evaluation of risk. So for identification, I need to set the context, then I'll identify the risk, then I'll start analyzing that. When I say that I'm analyzing the risk, which means there are 2 factors that are always related to the risk, characteristics of the risk. One is the probability in which the risk is going to happen. The other one is when it happens, what is the impact when it occurs, what is the impact that it is going to make. So the impact and the probability, these are the 2 characteristics that we'll always be using when you want to analyze that. So we are going to quantify them, each of this, and then using that quantified values, we will be quantifying the risk itself. And that is how we will be evaluating the risk. Once it is evaluated, then we will be prioritizing that. That is what we do as part of the risk assessment. So once it is done, once it is prioritized, I'm going to make a decision what risk I'm going to have treatment. So treatment plans are going to be specific for every risk. So that comes as a later stage. You are going to come out with a treatment plan for individual risk. And then as part of the thing, everywhere we are going to have multiple SMEs who will be doing various activities. So these activities are going to be done as a consultant. We are going to call SMEs, and then these SMEs are going to consult, and we are going to get that one. That's why this process is part of our risk management. And when the moment we start identifying the risk, the moment you have the list of risk identified, we will start monitoring them. Only by monitoring, we will know that whether the risk is within control or it is about to occur. So that is, if you want to know that, you need to monitor that, and periodically you are going to review that one. Only then you make a decision to apply the risk treatment, or you are going to remove the treatment which is already there. So this is the risk management process that is there, which is 31,001, or the similar thing that is there in 27005 also. Now, this is concept, we will be using it later. But now, with respect to privacy, how it is done, that's what we are going to see here. Now, for first thing, when we talk about privacy risk assessment, what is risk? Risk is something, or I have a target. Anything that comes between me and my target is going to be a risk. So I want to achieve something, and something comes in between, and it is not allowing me to meet that target. And that is what is a risk. So effect of uncertainty of privacy. And again, there is another thing between when we talk about risk, what is the difference between issue and risk? Issue is an ongoing one for which you will be having a solution as part of your process. Whereas risk is, you have a probability there, uncertainty is there. So it may happen or may not happen. So depending on the impact level, you may have a plan or you may have a measure for it, control measure for it, or you may not have a measure for it. That is the difference between that. So risk, so that is why we always monitor that and we evaluate that, prioritize that, and based on that, we will decide whether we need to go for a treatment or not. That is what is a privacy risk, what we talk about. Uncertainty is a state, even partial or deficiency of the information related to understanding or knowledge of an event, its consequence or likelihood. So anything that is going to be there is going to be a risk. Now, risk with respect to data privacy is any information that we are going to lose from that part. So what is the meaning of risk assessment, privacy risk assessment? So overall process of risk identification, this is the thing what we have seen earlier with regard to processing of personally identifiable information. So we are going to conduct a risk assessment, which means identify, analyze, and evaluate. That is what is assessment on the risks that are related to privacy. That is what is a privacy risk assessment. The process what we have is that one. That is a overall definition for that one. So this PIA, privacy impact analysis, identifying the privacy impacts, the first thing. So this is also called as a privacy impact assessment. So it is sometimes we call this a risk assessment. Risk is nothing but, so risk is always represented by the impact that it has. That's why we always look what impact it is going to be there, and we will be assessing actually the impact that it is going to create. So both are same. So we are going to see PIA. So identifying the privacy impact. So in this one, you always will be looking for PIA. I told you, PIA is this. Okay, somebody is asking what is PIA. PIA is privacy impact assessment. This is a different terminology for the same risk assessment, the way that it's defined. So risk is one thing. It is going to have an impact. Now, when I say that I'm going to assess the risk, ultimately, I'm going to assess the impact that it is going to create when it is going to occur. So I can call it as privacy risk assessment or privacy impact assessment. Both are same. So I'm going to use this PIA, the terminology here. So identifying privacy impact, privacy risks, and responsibilities. Now, as I said earlier, risk is one thing. Risk is a situation in which a threat is going to have an impact using the vulnerability in our system. That situation, that moment, when that happens, we call that as a risk related to privacy. So you are going to identify the privacy impact, the level of impact that it is going to create, and who is going to do that one. When this is going to be the job, then roles are going to be defined and responsibilities are going to be defined. And then there are certain cases, once you know, like there's also a concept that is there as part of ISO. It is actually they're coming from 9001, which is used in every standard that we have, most of the standard that we have as part of ISO. You start with process, like when you say that, why do you want to go for implementing a standard? Main thing is we have a process. If it is an organization which is having only 20 employees, so mostly there will be one or two key guys who will be doing everything. They are the key people who will be doing everything and they will be running the whole show. That is what is a person-based organization. So when these guys are left, then we will be left with it. Nobody can do that one. So we do not want to get into that. When you want to grow into a bigger company, we do not want to be dependent on few people. That is why we go for implementing a standard or some process standard there. And then from the person-based approach, you will be moving to process-based approach. So in the process-based approach, you are going to define the process. You say that if this is a process, for this process, these are the skills required, and you need a person with the skills of this competency level. And then when that guy is going to do that one, he is going to take this much time, and you are going to get this deliverable. And then this deliverable will be meeting this quality levels. So everything is going to be defined, and irrespective of who is going to do that one, as long as the skill set are going to be same, you are going to get same level of output. So your consistency, you can see as part of this process-based approach. That's the second level. So you moved from person-based approach to a process-based approach. And ISO is not happy or comfortable with that. It says you'll have to go to the next level. The next level is called risk-based approach. That is what here we talk about this. When you talk about risk-based approach, it says while you are defining the process itself, you need to identify what are the risks that are associated with that process. So when you are defining, you are going to define at the least level of activities. Then you see that what are the risks that are associated with that. And for every associated risk, you will also be identifying a way to mitigate that. Now, these mitigation activities are to be added as part of the process itself. So when I'm going to define my process for the first time, that is when I'm designing that part of that, I'm also going to talk about the risks there and also the mitigation activities there. So my design is going to be with the risks already taken care of. That is the thing what we are looking for. That is a risk-based approach. That is what we need to have as part of that. So that is also related to privacy by design. So the risks that we see here with respect to privacy are going to be those things where I will be in a position to minimize that by using this privacy by design. So by design, as I said earlier, when I'm going to give a checkbox, and only when you are going to check the checkbox, I'll enable the button, so that every time you are going to give a consent to me. Without giving consent, you cannot go. So I'm forcing you to give your consent by design. That is what is privacy by design. So either way, it is privacy is also because you need to consent. Otherwise, I will not do. Otherwise, you cannot okay that. So that is what is a privacy by design. So that is what should be part of this PA. You need to take care of this one, and reviewing a new information system privacy risk and assessing it. So when you are doing it for the new system, you are going to see what are the possible risks that can happen. And then you see that how we can build it as part of the design itself so that these risks are already mitigated. This is a risk mitigation system. So if you are not done, then as part of the design, you are always dependent on the data principle to make a decision. Providing the basis for provision of privacy information to principals, maintaining later updates. So these are the two things right here. One is providing the basis for provision of privacy information to PIA principals on all PIA principal mitigation activities recommended. So that is going to be part of that. Then when you move to maintenance phase, so these things you are also going to use the same PIA that you are going to conduct so that you can see whether it is going to have an impact. So PIA can be conducted when you are going to design a new system, PIMS system. Later also on a periodical basis, we'll be conducting PIA, because always we want to know what are the risks that are there and what is the level they are in. So whether they are about to occur or not. That is what is going to be part of our PIA. Okay, so we have certain few more things that are there as part of this. So in this one, what you see here, we have still 20 minutes. We have a few more slides. I think we can finish. So objectives of PIA reporting. So when PIA is going to happen, when you are going to conduct impact analysis here, then how we are going to report. So you have a PIA which is going to be conducted, and there are going to be 4 stakeholders who are going to be there. One is the principal, the regulators, the customer, and the management. Now what is that which is going to be reported? So for the principal, I'm going to assure by conducting this PIA, I'm going to assure him that his data is going to be secured with me. His privacy is going to be maintained. And for the regulator, I'm going to say that everything is everything is complied, everything is in check. And for the management, there are 2 things that I'm going to give. On the ongoing basis, I'm always going to create awareness to them that the things are going as per the expectation. And when you are going for the earlier stages, that is when you are going to define stage, I'm always ensure that the privacy requirements are included as part of the functional and non-functional requirements. So when I'm going to build this for the first time, which means I'm going to build PIMS for the first time, then I'm going to conduct this PIA. So I'm going to ensure that I have all my privacy related requirements taken care. That should be part of my functional or non-functional requirement. Now, I think you hope you know about the difference between functional and non-functional requirement. Any software application has these 2, functional and non-functional requirement. Functional requirement is what are the features that are there, how it has to behave, UI based one, how it has to behave. Non-functional requirement is with respect to certain things. Non-functional qualities, there are, it is also their standard available in ISO for that one. It's something like how, what are the things that are there? Like it should be expecting when the transactions are done, every transaction should be over within 2 seconds, or it should allow 22 or 25 concurrent users. Those things are going to be part of the non-functional requirements. That should also be considered, so that in both functional and non-functional requirement, I need to ensure my privacy requirements are already addressed. So, and this is for the other people who are going to be there. So processor and controller, there we are going to give some information so that they will know what is happening there. So this is how we will be reporting when we are going to conduct a PIA, impact analysis. Process for conducting PIA, what is a process? Simple process that we have, normal process. You have action. For that action, you are always going to have an input. And out of this action, you are going to get some output from that one. And this action is going to be having objective. Objective is to get this output. And then you'll also be having an implementation guidance on how to do this action. So that is how, when we define the PIA activities, we'll be defining like this. Okay, few more things they have. So PIA threshold analysis. This one is whenever you go for this PIA, when we go for this impact analysis, impact is always going to be there. As I said earlier, when we are born with the risk of dying, but we don't mind, we don't think about the risk of dying because at that point of time, because the level is going to be there. There is always going to be, for every risk, there are going to be two measures which are going to be critical. One is the critical point. So when it crosses, it is that impact is going to affect our deliverable. The other one is going to be the minimum point. When the risk level goes below that, we say that risk is no more there, or its impact is negligible. So in between, the risk value is always going to be fluctuating between this minimum value and the critical value. So during this time, we will be monitoring that. So monitoring is an activity which is going to tell us whether it is going towards the critical point or whether it is going towards a minimum point. Based on that, that is a threshold value. That similar way, we are going to say what is there is a thing like whenever we talk about PIA impact is always there. As I said, impact is always there, risks are always there, but there is going to be threshold for every impact. That is what we are going to analyze. At which point we consider that it is going to have a impact which we are going to feel, which is going to affect us. So that is the threshold analysis. So for every impact that we have, we are going to do that one. That's the first thing. Only when it crosses that, we consider that as an incident. Okay. Now, when you go for PIA, first thing is you are going to define the scope. When you are going to define the scope, what are the things that it should address? You are going to define. So when I'm going for PIA for the first time, my company has decided that we need to have a PIMS. And first activity I'm going to do that is I'm going to identify the risk in my organization related to privacy. So I'm going to conduct a PIA. Now for that one, what are the things? What is the scope that I allow to define? So first thing is, what is the criteria to use to estimate the level of impact? Why it is required? Because of this. I have a threshold and I am going to consider a risk which is going to impact me only when it crosses this level. So I'm going to set a criteria for that one. And what is the criteria for likelihood? So probability is also there. Probability is always there. It is always going to be fluctuating between 0 and 1. So when that is the case, when I will consider that, I'll have to be ready for that one. So that is a criteria that is going to be there. And what is the scale used for estimate level of impact? So when I say it is a criteria, I will be using some scale for that. It depends on what is that, what is the measure. If it is going to be something like privacy, it is going to be something like when there is a request and the request is not, when the request is coming from the principal, I have not responded back to that one. How long time is there? So there is going to be 3-day time or 7 working days time. It is there. That is a SLA what we have. That is a critical thing that we have. Then that is a level. So number of working days is going to be the level for which that. So for every risk that we are going to identify, there is always going to be one measure. So, and for that measure, you are going to have minimum and critical level for that one. Same case for the likelihood also. This is a measure that you are going to see for that one. And the significance. What significance of each combination of this? Because sometimes impact may be more, but likelihood is going to be less. I'll give an example. Earthquake. Now the impact is huge. When the earthquake is going to occur, impact is always going to be huge. Of course, it is not a privacy related one, but I'm just giving an example. But likelihood is going to be very, very less. So the product of that is going to be, that is what is a risk value, which is going to be less. That is where the significance is going to be. Significance is always going to be product of these two, impact and likelihood. That is what I'm going to consider. And then And based on the significance, once I have calculated for all the risks that I have listed, then I'm going to prioritize. So that is also one thing that I am going to, at what level I'm going to consider that it is going to be significant, so that I should be prepared to have a plan for that. Then the applicable strategy. So how to treat that? So significance, it means it might occur. In that case, what is the plan that, what is the strategy I'm going to have? So this should be part of my scope. Now, when I say this has to happen for every risk that I'm going to define. So that is what is going to be the scope for PIA. Okay, now what is that I'm going to assess? When I'm going to do PIA, what is that I'm going to assess? So I'm going to do three things here. One is I'll keep questioning this. What are the PIAs processed? What is the purpose? What are the main benefits? Who are the recipients? What are the business processes? So in everything that is given here, there is going to be some risk. So I'm going to look for this and then see that whether risk is associated or not. This is a business process. So I'm going to look for the business process and see whether the risks are associated there or not. That is what is going to be part of it. That's the first set. I'm going to ask as many questions as possible. Identification of the risk. Non-exhaustive questions. So keep asking it, so that the more you have, the better you are prepared. The second point is, for every PIA, personally identifiable information, organization should identify the supporting assets. So every PIA, when I say that PIA, where is that? So when I say that it is going to be my employee ID, so I say that bank account number. Now bank account number, where I'm storing it for the employees. So one thing is it is going to be available as part of my employee management system. And whenever I'm going to take a pay, when I'm going to send a notice to bank for payment, that report will be having a account number and name. So these are the assets, supporting assets, where this personal identifiable information will be available. So risks are going to be there. Why we are finding that? Because more risk is going to be there. So here it's a process. I'm going to find the risk areas. Here, assets, related to assets, I'm going to see how it is going to be vulnerable. I'm going to look for the vulnerable one. So whenever I'm going to transmit, whenever I'm going to use some hardware or software, these are the things which are going to support my PIA. And definitely when communications are going to happen, or when paper transmissions are going to happen, these are going to have ways by which risk is going to occur. The third part is operational plans and procedure, the process, that is gaps in the process. So that is also going to be one thing where I'm going to do that one. So these are the areas I'll be looking for when I'm going to do my PIA. Okay, next step is criteria. We did talk about that criteria. What is the meaning of that? The criteria is how it is going to be harmful for our system. So it can be harmful for anything. You're going to look for that for the principle, data principle. So it can be like physical, financial, reputational harm, embarrassment, or invasion. Anything can happen. Anything is one form of loss that we are going to bring to our data principle or our principle here. So we need to identify the harm. That is what, based on that only, you are going to come out with the criteria. And you are going to apply that. What are the legal regulatory requirements? Each of that you are going to see how it is going to affect the individual. If this risk is going to occur, what is the legal and regulatory requirements I have? I'll have to face with. What are the stakeholder expectations where it is going to be not fulfilled because of this risk? So I'm going to map each of that with that and then see what harms that are going to be created. That's a risk criteria. Then I'm going to have a plan. So it's a normal plan, PIA. What are the things that I'm going to do? It's a project plan that I'm going to have. Then the stakeholders. I'm going to identify the stakeholders who are going to be part of that and establish the consultation plan, how we are going to do that one. And consult with them, and then normally in the stakeholders we'll be having all the processes and sub-processes and stakeholders who are going to be part of that, how we are going to engage them as part of your PIA. When you do a PIA, it is for the entire organization, entire privacy information management system. Then conducting, we are going to conduct that. So how do you do that one? Identify the information flows, analyze the implications of the use case, determine the relevant privacy safeguarding requirements. Then you are going to assess the privacy risk. And then you are going to treat the privacy. This is the last one that we have. This is not part of PA because you are going to identify. Then planning is one thing. We are just plan it here. So this is a risk that you have identified. And for this risk, this is how we can go for treatment. That is what is going to be part of the way that we are going to conduct impact analysis. So once it is done, then you have this impact privacy treatment plans. As part of that, you have these things. You are going to implement it, review that. Once it is implemented, you are going to monitor for some time, review, audit it, and then if needed, you are going to go for changes. That's a life cycle that you have for implementation. It's a simple flow, which is going to be applicable for anything. Then at the end, you are going to give a PII report. So in this report, what you should take care. So it should talk about the structure, the way that it's going to be there, scope of the assessment. Initially, you had the scope which you have defined. That is what you are going to add here. Privacy requirements, risk assessment, the one you have done. What are the treatment plan, the one that what you have done here. And then the conclusions and decision that's going to be there. PII report should take care of those things, which actually you are going to summarize whatever you have done so far and then put it as a document here. Then the last one, what we have is estimating the level of impact. So now there are two things which you always look for when we are analyzing that. One is estimating the level of impact. Another thing is estimating the likelihood. So when you estimate that, you are going to do it negligible, limited, significant, or maximum. The same way, you're also going to do that negligible, limited, for every risk that you have. Based on this only, you are going to convert that and then you are going to quantify that. This is how you are going to convert that.